What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto father of Sailor Moon? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. Nagato's nose bled, his eyes bled, his ears bled. Crimson liquid fell down his face as he watched his final attack wrap the very earth around the nine-tailed fox. Chibaku Tensai. He coughed another stream of blood. I've captured you, fox. From his place within the tree he prayed that he wouldn't have to do any more. He just didn't have the strength. All of his energy went into that last attack. Please, Kami, please. Let this be the end. Nagato, you don't have to go so far. This is the nine tails we are talking about, Conan. Suddenly the large moon he'd created started to shatter as the head of a giant beast made its way out. No, 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 he coughed, pools of red falling down to his chest. This can't be. It's so unfair. What power? Nagato, the moon you've created, send it up, Conan screamed. If the beast lands on the earth, I am not sure if anyone or anything will survive. She went up to her friend, and pulled out his battered arms out of the machine. So frail, if he keeps this up he's going to die. Nagato raised his spiraled eyes to the giant roaring creature. Then looked at the concerned eyes of his friend, and then closed his own. Conan, I am so sorry. With his last strength he pushed all his energy into the very force of gravity, sending the screaming eight-tailed beast into the air. This is the end for me. Conan's expression cracked and she hugged her longtime friend. No, Nagato. She reached up and unhooked the crippled man out of the machine and pulled him over her shoulder. Stay awake. We've done what we can. She looked up as her tree broke as the atmosphere started to sizzle as the creature released another bolt of pure energy. Maybe this was meant to be, to control such power. This world is better off without it. Within minutes the moon made of rock and soil rose through the atmosphere. Never to be seen by the elemental nations again. At the same time Naruto left his solar system. Its reality became no more. Queen Serenity, recent monarch of the Moon Kingdom, sat by her pool, watching the endless stars in the night. As it were nothing was happening, nothing that she could see anyway. All the many planets and people living on them seemed so distant, so far away. Their cares and worries so absent from her day-to-day life. She blinked as the bright lights of the night sky hurt her eyes. For a regular person, at least a person back on Earth, this would not occur, but Queen Serenity did not live on the Earth. No, she lived on the moon. A place that held no relevant atmosphere. The tall woman swept aside her long silver hair, putting away into twin ponytails, washing out the lather. She looked sideways to her palace, watching if any of the guards would make an action. So far they hadn't, they were doing a good job. She stood up, over the large outdoor pool and watched her reflection. She wasn't getting any younger. She had once been so vibrant, so forceful, so chaotic. Now though, she just wasn't sure. It had been a long time since she felt like a teenager, and the reality was she hadn't been one in over 10 years. Approaching her 30th birthday she could safely say that her younger years were far behind her. Lost in the sands of time. Grains so small, never to be found again. She twirled her silver hair one last time, watching her reflection on the pool. Oh, she was still beautiful, that she had no doubt. But the youth had left her. Once she had a thin waist, once she had a small face, once she had such delicate features. Now all of those features were no more. She looked at the reflection sadly, as her pale form glowed in the dark night. The stars in the pool reflected off so brightly. She smiled thinking how strange it was that she could look at the bright blazing balls of fire through water, yet never look at them without burning her eyes. Queen Serenity stared intently at the sun, through the pool watching as it grew brighter and brighter and brighter. This wasn't right. She'd been watching this sun many times, and it shouldn't have acted like that. She looked up at the sky, avoiding the blazing stars that would have damaged her vision, and tried to look at the bright source. Whatever it was, it contained a tremendous amount of energy. The Moon Queen stared off at her crystal palace far ahead, watching for any of the guards nearby. She called out for a few, and none came. Sighing, she walked past her pool and reached for a towel. Wiping off the water that trickled down her pale, thin body, the woman took it upon herself to find some clothes. She chided herself for making this the one night she had given her handmaidens a day off. Never again would she make this mistake. Had tomorrow not been such an important day, the day the entire kingdom would be expecting her to hold the tournament to determine her one-time mate, she wouldn't have allowed such a thing. Alas, the castle was vastly understaffed for today, and many were planning to go all out in the tournament which would take place within 24 hours. Guards, guards. A guard walked out from his post, looking nervous. He tried not to look at the much taller queen, dressed only in white robes. He stared at the floor and kneeled. "What is it that you command, Queen Serenity?" The Moon Queen scowled, but did not reply at first. She wasn't sure what she wanted. All she knew was that there was something wrong with one of the suns in the night sky. She closed her mouth before speaking. "It's nothing. You may return to your post." The guard looked at her curiously, but did as he was told. Looking a bit disappointed that he had nothing to do. "If you need anything else, my queen, I will be here." The queen smiled, but didn't say anything. The queen continued to watch the glowing energy, but this time from her balcony in her palace. Whatever it was coming closer. Was this some kind of spaceship? No, it couldn't be. Their scanners would have detected it if that was the case. Then what was it? An enemy? A friend? An ally? She couldn't be sure, and she didn't want to take a risk. It was coming towards her world at a tremendous speed, and she'd be damned if it ruined tomorrow's event. The queen had waited 20 years for tomorrow. Tomorrow would be the day she would have a mate, the strongest male in the entire kingdom, and she would finally have an heir to her throne. Such a practice seemed barbaric to the other planet kingdoms. Mercury certainly thought so, and Jupiter was a bit perplexed as to why they should continue such an old tradition, but the queen insisted on this. Much as she insisted on most of her citizens wearing clothing similar to what resembled fairy-like articles of the Phi court. Not many understood the reasoning behind the strange way their kingdom was set up. It seemed beautiful, of course, so technologically advanced, however the reality was that it was badly designed against invaders. Many tried to tell the queen that in the event of a rebellion the kingdom would undoubtedly fall, but the queen would not be dissuaded from the way she shaped her kingdom to look like her perfect silver millennium. "Ah, it's almost here." She turned away from the balcony and proceeded down the steps. The queen watched in fascination as the giant ball of energy came closer to where the astronomers predicted that it would land. She had her team of guards with her in case something dangerous were to occur. The astronomers said that whatever was coming to impact their home, it wasn't a spacecraft. They weren't sure what it was. The queen and her guards stood watching, waiting as it approached and held in their breaths as the figure made impact. Many of the guards blocked the queen from the rubble that scattered when the giant ball of energy dispersed into the ground, and even more tried to get the queen away from it. Alas, that wouldn't work, as their queen was adamant in finding out what was inside that ball of energy. She stepped over the guards to look at the thing that was to come out from the ground, but finding nothing moving. Curious, she and a guard walked past the broken bits of ground and tried to figure out what exactly had smashed through the ground. Whether it was something that was even remotely human. There were a few races in the other planets that could make the impact, but they were rare. Though if they came from the Dark Kingdom, that was another matter entirely. "What is that?" she asked. "Is that a boy?" Sure enough, in front of the tall queen was a figure of a boy. A very naked boy. One of the guards pulled off a cape and draped it over the person. "He looks hurt." The queen shook her head from that thought and looked back at the guard who sacrificed a part of his uniform to give the boy back some form of dignity. "What do you make of this?" The guard wasn't sure how to answer, judging by his expression, so she turned back to the boy with a bit more curiosity. He was not tall, nor was he short. He didn't look too injured, nor did he look well. His hair was not quite blonde, but it wasn't drab either. Overall, he looked like a regular person. So it meant that he was unlikely a member of the Moon Kingdom. Earthling, perhaps? She directed the men to take him back to the medical tent, and to have him looked over. She didn't want to bring him back to the palace hospital since he could potentially be an enemy. Afterwards they could do what they wished with him, after he'd been through the army medics. The doctors didn't find anything unusual about the boy, other than the fact that he was healing at a very odd rate. He had his bones broken in a dozen places and most of his circulatory system was fried. How someone managed to destroy so many internal body parts, they were not entirely sure. It was as if someone had set fire to his entire nervous system. His brain activity seemed normal, which was strange since a good part of his frontal lobes were missing, and yet were growing back at an odd rate. That didn't make much sense to the doctors, But the Moon Kingdom did have citizens with similar abilities, so it didn't seem that far of a stretch. What worried them was that the healing factors of his seemed to come from within the boy's body, not from external forces. This meant that the boy was possibly an alien of their solar system, a member of the Dark Kingdom. That wasn't something they were willing to say out loud without proof, of course, but the signs were all there. They had to bandage him as best they could and kept him under sedation. "What interests you, Queen Serenity?" a tall woman with black hair asked. "He seems like just a boy." The tall woman scowled. "You have a big day tomorrow." "Perhaps, Mars," the queen said, ignoring the worried sound of her longtime friend and rival. "But it is not every day that someone this interesting just happens to come into our lives. Would it not be prudent to see what comes out of this?" Her friend shook her head. "I fear nothing good will." Only half a day remained until the tournament to decide her mate would commence, and she still hadn't mentally prepared herself. Thoughts of that strange traveler from beyond the stars continued to enter her mind. She didn't pay as much attention to the court rulings as she normally would, and many of her servants wondered if she was unwell. "I am fine, it's just, I am a bit off, that is all," she had replied. "I'll be well when the event is over." At least she hoped. "He's awake, my queen," one of the guards said. "Would you like to see him?" The queen looked at the man thoughtfully. "Yes." When they arrived in the room where the army kept the boy, shackled on his bed, she was surprised to see him in such good spirits. The boy smiled at her. He spoke in a strange language that she didn't understand. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, hoping to convey what she meant using both her tone and sign language. The blonde-haired boy blinked and scratched his head. The queen scowled. "This is going to be difficult." "Are you well?" she said, doing another rotation of sign language, only to have the boy look at her like she was a fool. The queen shook her head and frowned. "I see, you don't know a word I am saying, is that correct?" The boy seemed to have understood this part and nodded his head, a strange carefree grin on his face. "Very well then," she said slowly, "I suppose we can start with my name." She pointed to herself. "I am Queen Serenity." She pointed her long finger to the boy. "What is your name?" The boy looked at her finger, smiled and said the words. "Uzumaki Naruto. Tomorrow my life will change," the queen explained to the blonde-haired boy, who slept on the hospital bed. "I'll have conceived an heir before the day is done." She went on, not caring whether the boy listened to her or not. She just needed to get this off her chest. "I don't have a choice, no matter what the others say." She sighed. "It's tradition. We need the rules of the past to govern the present. It's these kinds of rules that hold legitimacy. It's these archaic rituals that keep our civilization so stable. If it has not failed us now, why change it?" The boy snorted, but she didn't care. "I know you can't understand a word I say, but thank you for listening." She smiled. Not many men listened, sadly. She laughed. "Thought if you were awake I'd imagine you might talk until I am positively disturbed." The blonde-haired boy yawned, shivering a bit at some nightmare. The queen took the blanket and pulled it over his body. While she was doing this, the boy woke up suddenly, and grabbed her hand, intending to twist it. Fast, very fast. The boy's eyes shot open and let her go, doing gestures that she could only understand as apologizes. "That's fine. I do not blame you, young one." She laughed, seeing his downcast expression. The expression looked so innocent on him. "I'll come back in a few hours, wait here. I want to know more about you." The blonde-haired boy tilted his head, and she shook her head. "What am I saying? He doesn't speak a word of our language." "Where do you come from?" she asked, for the third time. "Yes, I get it. You are from a galaxy far, far away. But I want to know what region." The Moon Kingdom keeps detailed maps on many planets in the cosmos. The boy, who now wore customary white armor of the Moon Kingdom, tried in vain to understand them. The queen rubbed her temple and made the boy sit on a chair. "It's not use. We shouldn't even bother. My queen, I know this might not be the best time, but I really think you should head back to the palace. The tournament is tomorrow and you are going to need your energy." The guard who had first given Naruto something to cover himself with said, "Please, do not take this as an offense. I mean no disrespect. It's just that, we feel that you are spending an unreasonable amount of time in this military clinic." The queen raised an eyebrow, thinking how bold the guard captain was to make such a suggestion. She was about to retort that the man shouldn't have the audacity to command her, but thought better of it. The silver-haired woman felt her eyes tire, and almost closed them. He may be right. Very well, she said. She turned her head to the boy sitting on the chair looking at her with those curious eyes. I'll be back here before the tournament, Mr. Uzumaki. She turned around and left the tent, leaving a confused boy, who just looked at everything in mild fascination. This is it, the day I've been waiting for my entire life. She was so nervous, her hands were shaking. I've been waiting for this day, have I not? She placed both her hands on her face. I've been a maiden for 30 years, shouldn't I be happy? She didn't feel happy. But, I am so afraid. Her body trembled. The boy sitting beside her put his large hands over her soft ones, and she looked at him in surprise. He doesn't speak a word of moon, but he might understand intent. Smile, serenity, don't make him feel uncomfortable. She did. It was fake. The boy scowled at her, and brushed a strand of hair away from her face. What am I doing here? She frowned. Am I this weak? Do I fear my new mate this much? It's only one time, one night. That is all, I won't need to see the father again, so why am I so afraid? The boy stood in front of her, his face only inches from her own. He spoke words to her that almost made her laugh. He was trying so hard to put her at ease. I am okay, do not worry about me. She stood up, again leaving the tent when she felt his hand reach out and touch hers. The queen looked at it. It was so calloused, so dark, so sunburned. Then she looked at her own. There was no denying that the boy in front of her was some kind of commoner, and she royalty. The stark contrast was impressive, and yet she didn't pull away. She tilted her head so slightly, and said, Do you want to see the tournament? My queen, are you sure this is wise? The guard captain questioned, letting the boy enter? We know nothing of his background, and the dangers he could be in his extraordinary. The queen shooed off the man's worry. Let him fight. He seemed excited when this was going on. Could you really say no to his expression? She laughed. His eyes practically burst out of his sockets when he saw the swords. The boy was surprising her. She had assumed that he was just a run-of-the-mill outer galactic traveler from a distant planet. Maybe someone on the run. Maybe a navigator. But a warrior or senshi, as they called them here, that was unusual. My queen serenity, what could you gain by letting the boy participate? Surely the stakes are high, her friend, Mars, said. Why did this? The queen looked up at the sky, her silver hair glowing. For nothing, something, maybe everything. She turned to face her friend coolly. What do I have to lose? Mars looked at her icily, her teeth clenched. Everything. Don't worry, boy, I'll go easy on you, said a tall knight in white armor. It'll be over in a minute. Uzumaki Naruto didn't seem to understand what this meant because he just smiled at the giant man holding a sword and looked at the arena around him. Queen Serenity wondered why the boy didn't at least carry a weapon with him, but then figured that the boy was only here to get a bit of attention, or fresh air. And I thought he might be amusing. Ah well. He is going to die, said Senshi Mars. You should pull him out right now, this is such a farce. The queen frowned but didn't answer her. She just watched as the boy dodged the man's sword and looked around him. He wasn't paying much attention to the battle, but was carefully observing his surroundings. The man behind him was getting frustrated and was charging his blade with energy. He seems to have some battle experience, the queen said, sounding amused. Perhaps he was a fighter in whatever galaxy he came from. Marsh snorted, but watched the strange boy fight nonetheless. No matter what the other man did, the boy would just jump out of the way and smile at the crowd around him. He ducked, jumped, sidestepped anything that came his way, and didn't even bother to hit back the knight. Did you tell him this was a fight? Marsh asked, sounding annoyed. This isn't a game, you know. Whoever wins this tournament, she paused, gets to. I know, the queen said. I know, Mars. Please don't say any more. The two looked at each other, smiled, and then looked back at the battlefield, just in time to see the man fly through the air, towards them. Don't blink this time, Mars said. The last 3 fights happened in an instant. If we turn away we will not see how the boy cheats. The queen sighed. I don't think he's cheating, Mars. I think this is just the way he is. He just appears very fast, reflexes far beyond what we are capable of. I can't accept that, Mars said. Look at him. He's just a small boy. My queen, he barely reaches the tip of your chin. The queen raised an eyebrow. What does height have to do with anything? She laughed. The boy may be short, but he's taken down half the best fighters of the kingdom, and no, we've missed it again. Mars groaned. So this is the semi-final, my queen, Mars said tiredly. Whatever we do, We must not let our eyes stray from the battlefield. Agreed. The queen was becoming frustrated. How does he keep doing this? The crowd kept saying things about how powerful he was, how he just put his fist out and literally made people fly into the air. That of course seemed impossible, and she wondered how the boy could have deceived everyone in such an elaborate way. He isn't a senshi, those powers should not be accessible to him. Finally one of the main events had arrived. The queen smiled. The boy, Uzumaki Naruto, was going to fight the guard captain. The man had been in her service for years and she knew from personal experience how dangerous he was with a sword, axe, gun, or whip. This wasn't someone the boy could easily bat away. Uzumaki will be defeated, Mars said from her side. There is no doubt. The queen wasn't so sure about that. The boy didn't seem tired at all, while the captain looked nearly dead. They had been fighting almost constantly since the start of the tournament and didn't get a chance to rest. However, the boy didn't seem fazed and looked more interested as he faced more opponents. Such energy, where does he get it from? The queen didn't let her eyes leave the boy as the guard captain went straight for the kill, and instead of dodging it the boy smiled and slammed his fist into his gut. Oh, my. Mars stood up from her chair, trying to get a better look. This is impossible. The guard captain had been tossed to the side of the arena, as if he was a tennis ball. What is he? The queen could not feel any evil intent coming off the boy, but her hands trembled when she saw him look up to her and wave. By instinct she waved back, but caught herself in time so that she wouldn't be seen doing it for too long. It wouldn't do to show favoritism. Mars, perhaps I had made a mistake about letting the boy enter, the queen said, her breath caught in her throat. A terrible one at that. Mars agreed, but her hands were shaking just as much as her queen. Powerful, you are, Prince Espion of the Earth smirked, but you will fall by my blade. The Dark Prince pulled out a long sword from his sheath and pointed it at Uzumaki Naruto. The small blonde-haired boy just laughed and bounced around. The prince became angry and shouted at the boy to stop, but the boy didn't listen and instead looked at the crowd. Many children were waving at him, and Uzumaki Naruto waved back. The prince growled, but didn't make a move until his opponent was facing him. I'll teach you to ignore me. The prince charged, just when the boy looked like he had let his guard down, but that was a ruse. Instead of hitting flesh, the prince felt his sword pierce thin air and looked down to see the boy's fist come from beneath him and land on the base of his chin. He felt dizzy from the impact and looked in front of him to see two Narutos. He wondered if this was just an illusion, and realized it was since he was simply seeing double due to the impact of the hit. He shook his head to clear this injury and charged at the boy, again. Only for the boy to laugh and kick him in the back of the head, sending him flying through the air 20 meters away into a crowd of peasants who ruthlessly stole his gear in broad daylight, while a group of guards came to the prince's rescue. Uzumaki, Uzumaki, Uzumaki. The queen shivered as the sounds penetrated her ears. The crowd was going crazy for the victor. They didn't care that he didn't represent any of the planets of the Moon Alliance. All they cared for was his defeat over the Prince of Earth. How had he done it? How could a mere mortal defeat the heir to a throne? Queen Serenity, Mars said, solemnly. You don't have to do this. There are other ways. Just because your mother, grandmother, and great-mother had done it this way, it doesn't mean, what I mean to say is. I know Mars, the queen said. She stood up with a serious look on her face. But this is how it should be. There was a silence between the two. Have I shown everyone in the kingdom that I have chosen the strongest? Yes, you have, Mars said tiredly. By choosing him, you have shown the kingdom that the future heir will be of powerful blood. Mars grit her teeth. But, my queen, that thing is a monster. Do you not sense it? The white-haired woman smiled. Mars, please. That boy is just that. A simple boy. She breathed into herself, letting her powers caress her. It's about time the ceremony starts. She breathed in more of her energy and let wings slowly come out of her back. Mars watched in awe as the queen's true form appeared. Large crystal butterfly wings surrounded her, and she spoke with a high regal voice. People of the Silver Moon Kingdom. She paused to get everyone's attention, and all the planets in her solar system watched her as she did so. I give you. She gestured the cameras towards the victor of the tournament. Uzumaki Naruto, the strongest fighter in the solar system. What say you to this, boy? She held up her smile as the crowd stood up and gave him a standing ovation. How will you react? Was this your plan all along? To deceive me with your innocence, so I would let you participate? The boy just looked confused, but smiled stupidly and bowed to everyone who gave him an applause. He turned his large toothy smile to the queen and coiled the muscles on his leg, getting into a jumping position. What is he doing? Can he really leap to this platform? Impossible. It's 50 meters from surface. And that is exactly what he did. Oh, dear, she gasped, seeing him right next to her, not looking winded at the least. He took her hand to shake it, and by habit the queen did so. The crowd went crazy. They've accepted him, he's shaking my hand as if we are equals, and they've accepted him, despite not knowing anything about him. What have I done? She gave a cold gaze to the smiling blonde, only to see him wearing that stupid expression and speaking in his strange language. She felt something drop in the pit of her stomach. Oh, no. Please, don't tell me he doesn't have a clue what's going on. The things I do for the Moon Kingdom, the queen said through clenched teeth. She put a white see-through gown, noticing how it hugged her body. Why did this have to happen to me? She couldn't let her anger show in public, but alone in her room, she was smashing everything in sight. What did I ever do to deserve this? She whispered. She looked around her room, which was in a complete mess. She looked herself at the mirror. Her tall form, her long white silver hair, her pink lips, her crescent moon on her forehead, and giant fairy wings. Why me? She took a deep breath and left her chambers. Walking towards the champion's chamber, where Uzumaki Naruto was sleeping. Though that wouldn't last for long. Senshi Mars stood outside the chamber of the champion. It's been 2 days. Did I miss the queen when she left? The two guards looked at each other a bit nervously. Actually, my lady, she hasn't left yet. They have been going at it for 2 days. Mars blinked. Care to repeat that? 2 days, didn't leave the room, we slid food in, but she hasn't left yet. Mars looked disturbed. Okay. She said this slowly. I'll come back tomorrow. The next day Mars stood in the same spot. Did I miss her this time? The guards looked at each other again. No, she's still in there, with him. For 3 days, Mars said, sounding frustrated. They've been together for 3 days. The queen doesn't seem to want to leave, one of them spoke up, only to get jabbed by another guard. Queen Serenity, Mars said tersely. Our virgin Queen Serenity, the most pure woman in all the realm, has just been exposed to a male, no, a boy, and doesn't want to leave his confines? The guards nodded. Mars groaned. I should have killed that boy. I have failed you, Queen Serenity. The queen wobbled out of the Uzumaki Naruto's bedroom, feeling limp everywhere. Unbelievable, what stamina. Before closing the door she shook her head with wonder. And it was his first time as well. She closed to the door behind her, only to meet a very irate Senshi Mars. Ah, evening Mars, the queen said, sounding a bit guilty. What brings you here? Mars glared at her queen. Care to explain why that took so long? From my memory this is the first time it has taken 3 days to obtain a man's seed. She looked sad at her queen. I never thought you were that type of woman who succumbed to lust so easily. 5 days. You've been in there for 5 days doing. The queen laughed. I think you have it wrong, Mars. Mars blinked. The queen smiled, a wide beautiful smile. I spent the last 2 days trying to convince him what was going on, one day trying to get him from jumping out of the balcony out of sheer terror, and the last 2 days just trying to get him to share the same bed with me. The queen shook her head. He seems to be more naive about mating than myself. Mars looked at her with a deadpan. You jest? The queen shook her head. If only. Mars looked at her queen once over. If that is the case, why are your feet so wobbly? The queen blushed. Because, well, that is to say, we've been at it for the past 10 hours. Here her face was burning. Without pause, Mars was speechless. Sailor Mars didn't know what to make of the boy, Uzumaki Naruto. He was powerful, that she had no doubt, but whether he could use that power was another matter altogether. He didn't seem to show off his amazing strength, and when challenged to a fight he found the quickest way to do battle, without giving away any of his talents. He's hiding something. She watched him spar with some of the senshi in the courtyard. But what? I don't know. She was starting to wonder whether or not Uzumaki Naruto was a spy of the Dark Kingdom. There had been activity of Yoma in the galaxy, and many of the locations where they appeared came from the exact coordinates the boy had flown from. Worst yet, the sailor had no idea how the boy arrived through vacuums in space. Common physics said that he should have been burnt to a crisp from the impacts his body would have had to endure traveling here, but somehow he survived. Mars couldn't let he worry for the boy go, even if the queen was happy enough to let the subject drop. She snuck behind him once again and attempted to get a kick into his form, before she was ruthlessly flung away. That was the problem with the boy. He seemed to know when you were approaching. Mars wouldn't be cowed so easily and went back into the fight, trying to ignore her annoyance at Sailor Mercury, as the blue-clad woman got in her way. She jumped into the air as his legs came at her from the ground and flipped back as he threw strange black stars at her. That was another problem with him. He seemed to use the most barbaric of weapons. Instead of using elemental powers like most, or sword skill, he used metal discs, knives, blunt objects, sharp objects, people, and rocks. Anything he could use, he used them. She had to admit he was resourceful, but with the rate he was going he wasn't showing any of the traits of any in the noble ranks. Yet he beat the nobles. Despite her misgivings, the boy had won the tournament. One that was designed to select for the strongest of genes. The Moon Kingdom did not have a male ruler, since it was a matriarchy. It opted to implement succession through female lines. Those female lines were products of publicly sanctioned unions, as Uzumaki Naruto had been publicly acknowledged by the vast majority of the empire. It was a true farce in of itself, but that was the end result and she could do very little about it. "My queen, why must you have such bad luck?" She jumped out of the way as Sailor Mercury was flung at her, and surrounded herself with fiery red energy. "Let's bring this up a level. Just because I can't kill him does not mean accidents couldn't happen." Queen Serenity watched her best friend and longest enemy fight off against the sire of her child. It had been a few months since their mating ritual and the product was satisfactory to say the least. There were no defects, and everything would go as planned, just as it had for eons. Despite the advanced technology of their race, many of the elder races continued to use their own wombs to create children. Some claimed that it made the bond between offspring and mother much stronger, but Queen Serenity liked to think that most just wanted to give their child a natural birth. Why not? Every child is entitled to come to the world through the vessel that helped create it. Did they not? The queen turned away from the battle, already assuming that Uzumaki would take care of Mars within the next few minutes, and sighed hearing the scream of her friend die down. It always amazed the queen how quickly he stopped these battles before they could get too extreme. Whenever one of the sailors would come close to someone any of their elements, he just knew what to do to neutralize them. Whether it was slamming them into the ground to allow the electrical particles to travel into the surface, or removing the oxygen in the area, creating fireballs that removed the element, to countering water attacks by disturbing the flow of molecules in the air, he just knew. How he knew how to do them, she wasn't certain. But she had a suspicion she was trained to do this. How long, she didn't know. One didn't remain the queen of the Moon Kingdom without noticing little things like that. That made her a bit more hopeful of Uzumaki. Perhaps he wouldn't be a total failure as a sire? She doubted that her child would inherit any of his abilities, but if she could use his strength against the quartz, that would be another matters altogether. "Naruto, are you done?" she shouted to the boy who was huffing in the court. The boy turned to look at her and waved. In an instant he was by her side. "I need you to come with me. I am heading to the hospital to see a few scans." She scrunched her nose. "But before that, I am going to need you to change." The boy looked at her, smelled himself, then looked at her, then grimaced, and smiled. He had a manner of doing this. She found it highly amusing, if a bit frustrating. "Yes, boy. Bath." She pointed to the royal bath. Now, Queen Serenity looked at the image of the developing baby inside her. This was the 15th time she had come here, and was now starting her 3rd trimester, but to see her little girl so developed made her smile. "Do you see her, Naruto? That's your child." She turned to face him, puzzled at his expression. "Well, what do you think?" Naruto looked at her and then the moving baby in the screen, appearing nervous. "He's afraid." The queen tried to hold his hand, then, catching herself from this stupidity, pulled it back. She couldn't let her amusement of him turn into any kind of affection. Once the baby was born he would leave, she would have a new heir, and he would return to wherever he came from. Still, he looks worried, and why is he examining the child like that? She looked to Sailor Mercury for help, who was doing the scans, but the blue-haired Senshi wasn't sure either. "She's perfectly healthy, isn't she?" Mercury nodded. "Better even. I've never seen such genetic diversity in a child before, Queen Serenity. Normally we would have to insert the stem cells into the womb to immunize the babies to diseases, or artificially send vectors with RNA and DNA segments to provide the developing fetus the tolerance. But this child seems to have the genes necessary to fight off many of the diseases that compound this universe. The queen looked surprised. How is that possible? Mercury shook her head. I don't know. She turned to look at the father who was crouched over the screen. But I am starting to think Mr. Uzumaki Naruto might. Naruto looked at the moving fetus on the screen with hesitation. Please, please. Oh, Kami, don't let there be anything wrong with her. His blue eyes trailed over the baby carefully, not missing a single detail about her. His heart told him that nothing was wrong with the girl, but his mind was processing a different story. What if the baby had fox ears? Claws? Tail? What if it wasn't human? What if? There were so many possible outcomes and each one seemed more terrifying than the previous one. He had never been in this kind of situation before and he was anxious to get out of it as soon as possible. But I can't just leave her. He looked at the baby cuddled in its womb. She's mine. That was the problem going through the boy's mind. He had fathered a child. Willingly or not was not the issue. The end result was that in a few months he would have a daughter and he'd never see her again after she was born. He wouldn't even see the mother either. Which was a shame. He had lived in the palace for the past few months and was getting attached to the place. The people, the food, the servants, and even some of the nobles were becoming normal. It was only months prior that everything seemed so new and exciting, sometimes even frightening, but he finally had a hold on this reality. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know where Konoha was. He wasn't sure if there was any way for him to return back, but he did know that the people who helped him establish a new life here was in his debt. He would pay them back one way or the other. It was the least he could do. When the queen had entered his room all those months ago, he didn't know what he was in for, but he should have. Everything was screaming fertility ceremony. They even had the token tournament to bed the queen who would give birth to the new ruler. He missed all the signs, and what was worse was he had edited so many of his teacher's stories that depicted these situations ever so often. I am a fool. He closed his eyes and grit his teeth. He breathed out and breathed in. He opened his eyes again to see the puzzled face of the queen in front of him. She was asking him if he was all right and he wasn't sure how he was going to answer her. That was another problem. He still hadn't mastered their language. He didn't know what they were trying to tell him half the time, and the other half of the time he found their customs awkward. These people dressed in clothes of the most expensive silks and spent all their time in parties. Do they ever do any work? He looked at Sailor Mercury, who looked back at him with consternation. Aside from this one, Naruto was not a bigoted person, but he had to admit that the Moon Kingdom was filled with extraordinarily odd people. They were nice enough folks, but they didn't seem to have a fierce drive to survive. They were beautiful, something he couldn't doubt, and the queen was the very embodiment of this quality, but they felt so dead. An illusion. This whole place is so perfect. He sighed and then looked at the queen, putting on a fake smile. Nothing but an illusion, easily made. Easily shattered. Naruto walked over to the queen and held her hand. She forced it back, but he didn't let go. She thinks I am simple. That was another thing he didn't like about the queen. She thinks me as nothing more than a barbarian. He snorted. Nothing new. No one ever took him seriously. He didn't say the right things at the right time. When he spoke like a buffoon, and all of his idealism made him look even more idiotic to the majority of Konoha. Despite his ideals mirroring many of the lessons the first, second, third, and fourth leaders of their village. Still, I had to play the part of the clown. He knelt beside the queen, who looked startled, and put his ears to her belly. I wonder if I talk to you, will you hear me? The queen put her hands in his hair and Naruto sighed. She's patting me like a dog. She thinks me as nothing more than a pet. He grimaced in distaste, and had to bite down with sheer effort the urge to growl. I doubt a dog could strike down the people I fought back in my world. You do not look well, Naruto, perhaps you should leave, the queen suggested, looking at him distrustfully. You are being a bit forward, are you not? Oh, and I wasn't being forward when I was in your bed, my lady? The boy put on a smile and stood up to bow to her. If I could speak your language, what I would say to you, Crystal Queen. He gathered the energy in his body and channeled them around his coils. He breathed in the sage chakra of the environment and found them dead. It made him sad to see that all the wildlife in this area was artificial, and even more sad that no one seemed to care. This place was a utopia, and yet was a living embodiment of a perfect hell. He teleported out of the room and found himself outside in the walkways of the utopian civilization of Silver Crystal Palace. He looked at the sky and saw the millions of planets that the civilization ruled. It's almost like a fantasy. To be able to control so many planets, each planet housing millions of people. He jumped over a few pillars and landed on the palace balcony. I wonder, can I see my planet from here? I don't think you can. Naruto jumped and looked behind him. He was never surprised easily. When it was bad news for the people around him, since they mostly came in the form of Biju hunters trying to capture him and remove the beast in his stomach. Don't be afraid of me, the same voice said. The owner of said voice walked out of the shadows of the balcony and into the light of the Thousand Nights. I am a friend. I have no friends. Naruto would not let the girl in front of him see his discomfort. Not here, and not back home. The girl's reddish-purple eyes looked at him with something akin to sadness, but it went away just as quickly. You have to listen to me, I beg you. She stepped closer to him, so close that Naruto almost gasped at her sheer exotic beauty. She was tall, taller than most girls he had met. Her skin had a light tan that shone in the moonlight with eyes that burned brighter still. She wore the same sailor uniforms the other senshi wore, but hers were a dark green, complementing her long hair, and she carried with her a large scepter. Naruto didn't like the look of that weapon, and turned his gaze to her crimson-purple eyes. Make this quick already. You know damn well I can't speak your language. Before I begin, I want to tell you that I don't know anything about you. I can't read your mind. I am not a prophet of destiny, and it wasn't my fault that you are here. She tried to reassure Naruto, but the boy's eyes just arched. But there are few who would argue that point. Sure, I'll buy that. But what do you want from me? He made his expression look annoyed so that she would get to the point. I have a spar with Mars later. The girl's face scrunched up in hesitation and her long face turned anxious. Sweat started falling down her brows and her fingers were clasping each other in front of her. I am sorry. She grabbed one of his hands in her own. Her face was only inches away, looking desperate. I've broken the law of time. Naruto could tell she was trying to tell him something important, but he didn't understand what this had to do with him. Please, I didn't mean to. It was an accident. She started to cry. Forgive me. The blonde was getting fed up with this and was starting to shake the woman's shoulders. I don't understand you. Why are you apologizing to me? She looked down at him, wiping a tear on her face and said, I am sorry I was not strong enough to break to maintain the barriers between our dimension. She sniffed, but continued to look at his darkening gaze. I am sorry, so sorry. She backed away, hesitating to say the last words. I am sorry, because in the future I broke the law of time. There is no going back to the universe you once lived in. She barely managed to say the final words. Because that universe is no more. Naruto remained patient as Sailor Pluto explained how in the distant future she had broken the law of time by letting a group of warriors cross the barrier. That had triggered a series of events that had led to new enemies being created for these groups of warriors, creating a new future, one that even she could not predict. She explained how it was absolutely necessary to break the law of time. Without breaking it, the future would be covered in darkness and humanity would fall to an evil demon. She did this all while crying, and Naruto knew that when it got to the part about his world, he was going to kill her. There is a price to be paid for breaking the laws that govern the universe, she said, not meeting his gaze. Your world was the one that suffered for it. By changing the future, she had literally destroyed the past. She destroyed hundreds of realities that built up the original future. In the past, ninjas occupied the earth in a battle against demons, aliens, other ninjas, and each other. That was the past that he had come from, the past that he had failed to protect. I destroyed the past, she said, backing away from him as Naruto grit his teeth. I didn't mean to. It wasn't supposed to be this way. If I broke the law of time, I thought that the one who would pay the price would be myself and the future Sailor Senshi, but I didn't know that it would be other realities that would. Naruto's hands wrapped around her neck and slammed her against the wall of the building. His clawed fingers wrapped around the space below her jaw so tightly that she was sure it was going to snap. She could barely see the person in front of her and was afraid that her head would pop like a water balloon with the force his muscles were putting on her. A powerful growl escaped from the deep throat of the boy, and Sailor Pluto saw his eyes turn red ever so quickly. The red then turned into slits and the slits turned into the shape of a cross as strange green energy wrapped around his already flowing red energy. He was keeping all of this and barely kept control, and he was channeling it right into her. What power! Pluto trembled. If I had known, I would have never come here. She tried to squirm when the boy opened her jaw to reveal rows of sharp yellow teeth, but she could barely move with all the dark, light energy that coursed through her. It was as if the boy was surrounded by a force of energy made of absolutely positive energy, but was constantly surrounded by physical embodiments of human malice. Before she could ponder this any further, she was dropped to the ground, falling on her knees and then face first onto the floor. She tried to get up but quickly fell as killing intent flowed through her body. Oh, God, he's going to shred me to pieces. She shivered as malignant hatred wrapped around her body and trembled as he got closer. Why can't I move? Move, Setsuna. Move, damn it, he's going to rip you apart. She looked up, bowed on the floor as he stood above her with something in his hands. It was a black blade. Setsuna closed her eyes waiting for him to strike her down, but then heard an anguished cry as something fell in front of her. She opened her eyes to see the boy in front of her, his head bowed even lower than her own, his hands slamming themselves on the floor. Setsuna took this chance to stand up, still shaking from the violent energy that she had been exposed to, and with the last of her strength teleported away from the Silver Palace. What have I done? So that's it, is it? Naruto said, laughing as he walked aimlessly across the wall of the Silver Moon Palace. He turned his head to see where he had come from. Everyone that I have ever cared about. Gone. Just because the stupid Senshi in the future couldn't defeat their enemies without resorting to manipulating the fabric of time and space. Naruto knew next to nothing about quantum physics, but he knew that if you changed the past, ripples would always follow. Everything he'd learned about these theories came from storybooks, but almost all the stories he'd ever read about them all had one singular meaning. Do not mess with time. That is exactly what these people did. And the ones who paid the cost were the people in his reality. But why am I alive? He wondered, bitterly. I lost control of the nine-tailed fox and was trapped in a moon. Pain flung me out of the atmosphere, but lost control. He shook his head. I made him lose control. I was supposed to die. With my life his plans would not come into fruition, so why am I the one to live through the destruction of my universe? He stopped as he got to the top of the Silver Palace. He took a seat, cross-legged, on the floor and watched the city around him. Beautiful, isn't it? Said a voice behind him. It took a millennium to get it to look like this. Naruto turned around to see Mars. She was sporting a cast on her arm. The last Uzumaki still didn't understand why the Senshi used such old-world healing methods. Some of the practices of this advanced civilization boggled him. They had the power to create babies in artificial wombs, but they chose to give birth. They didn't need to wear such embroidered clothes, yet they did so. They didn't even need to eat, but they did so, and ate the finest of delicacies. They barely ever got sick, yet they had clinics and hospitals. You look like you're troubled, Uzumaki, Mars said, scowling. Sometimes I wish I understood your language. It would help explain whether you are friend or foe. I am neither. He smiled at her. Someday, I might have to kill you. For what your people have done to mine. Mars did not feel the evil intent coming off the smiling boy. His energy was too well hidden, but she had sensed a truly dark energy a few hours ago, and it had led her to this location. Now finding the boy Uzumaki Naruto, she had a few questions to ask, but sensing nothing out of the ordinary, she began to question if the energy had come from another source. Do you miss your home? She asked him. The world you came from. Naruto didn't say anything. He opted to look up at the M4 quadrant in the solar system. Ah, yes. Those are some rather beautiful constellations, are they not? About the only beautiful thing around here. Everything here feels so hollow. Is there nothing but diamond-colored crystals around here? Were the rulers of this place so vain? Did my universe have to be destroyed for people like this to survive? He glared at the city. Sailor Mars caught it. Well, I think you have seen enough. Perhaps we should return, she sighed. The Queen has an announcement to make and you should hear it. It seems like the complications of the birth have been settled. You are no longer needed here, the Queen said, all business. That is not to say that we could not use your services in the kingdom, but I am afraid you cannot remain here in the palace. She closed her eyes. You must understand this is for the good of the child. Oh, I understand, all right. Naruto's goofy smile fell away instantly to be replaced by a grimace. The Queen looked surprised at this face, but Naruto wouldn't let up. You would not want a male role model for the girl to follow, would you? Here women rule, it's a matriarchal society, and seeing her father so close to the queen would give her radical ideas, wouldn't it, Serenity? You have incredible fighting skills. The queen continued, not missing the darkening face of the boy had shared her bedchambers for the past several months. Of course, you will be provided for. You have served the kingdom well, in many cases, too well. Naruto didn't respond, he simply glared up at her. He was starting to despise these people. They did not want him, but custom dictated that he help maintain their illusion that everyone in the Silver Moon Kingdoms were equal. Any of them could rise up the ranks and would be able to fight for the hand of the queen. But that of course was not the case. In reality they had planned for the foolish lordling of the earth to win the tournament in a grand show of power. Such a romantic notion would be created from his valiant efforts against all the ruffians from across the minor planet who dared to sire the future ruler of the Silver Moon Kingdom. I threw a wrench in your plans. He walked past the two guarding Senshi, this time Jupiter and Venus, and stood in front of her. I have to make my move now. I am going to have to say, no. The two guarding sailors grabbed his elbows, from both sides, but he just pushed past them with the empowered force of his chakra. That child is as much mine as it is yours, Serenity. Insolence, Queen Serenity muttered, trying to hide her surprise at the boy in front of her. I can have you killed right now. Try it, he said. I've learned a thing or two about how you people operate. When did you learn to speak our language? She asked, glaring at his bottomless blue eyes. I don't recall anyone trying to teach you. I don't speak your language. I don't even know half of what you are saying, Naruto said, shaking his head. I don't even know if you understand what I am saying. He grabbed the wrist of Sailor Jupiter and snapped it, causing the tall woman to drop to the floor, holding it. But I practiced my lines, and this is my ultimatum. He turned around to see the assembled guards. Hundreds upon hundreds of them lining up to attack him. He turned his head left and right to see the other sailor Senshi preparing to do battle and scowled. I wasn't trying to be harsh. I just want to stay here where my child is going to be born. He looked at Serenity, ignoring the power building up from the sailors. Is that wrong? Serenity turned her face away. It's not how things are done here. Naruto nodded. If you want her, you're going to have to fight for her. Understood. In a flash he was behind Sailor Venus, who was trying to sneak up behind him. Sorry, V, but you knew this was going to happen, didn't you? Before Sailor Venus could say anything, she was flung against the wall 50 meters from where she previously stood. A large crater formed along the cracks and she fell down like a doll onto the silver floor. Ouch, that's gotta smart. Mars Imperial Flame Shooter. An arrow made of fire fired onto the same spot Naruto stood. The boy took the hit to the chest, afraid that the flames might touch his pregnant queen. Mars, you idiot, are you trying to kill the queen? Jupiter shouted, relaxing her death glare at Naruto, sending it piercing to her friend. What do you think would happen if he stepped out of the way? He's not the type, Mars said, frowning. I may not like him, but he's a male of the old world. She gathered fire around her. Chauvinistic pig probably thinks the queen needs protecting too. She smiled, seeing the boy ready himself for a fight. If you don't go all out, you're going to die, Uzumaki. Up until now you haven't seen us when we use the energy of our planets. In a blink of an eye she was in front of him, charged with red flames. She punched him on the stomach, sending him hurling on the floor, rolling once, twice, 3 times, only for him to grab onto the floor and stop the momentum. He looked up at her in surprise, but that look quickly narrowed dangerously and he teleported out of the way as a beam of light came from the same place he'd flung Sailor Venus. Bastard's got some moves, Venus said, limping out from behind a crowd of guards. Watch out for his wrist, he's got a tough grip. We kind of noticed, Sailor Mercury mumbled, falling right next to Venus to heal the bleeding cut on her forehead. You okay? She was worried she'd suffered a concussion. Yeah, I am fine, she smirked. I've still got to give some payback. Mercury shook her head, but watched warily as Mars and Jupiter stood in front of him. Jupiter was charging her body with lightning while Mars had fire wrapping herself in a cloak. Meanwhile the boy just stood there in an ancient martial arts stance, displaying complete calm. Venus, where are the outers? Neptune, Uranus and Saturn are on a long-term mission, Venus said, letting go of a cry as the ribs below her skin started to mend itself. I'll put out a call. If this Uzumaki Naruto is as powerful as a Grand Yoma, this could get ugly. Better to be careful, Mercury said darkly. His DNA, I didn't want to let this be public knowledge, but it had some demonic segments. Some of the amino groups were altered, they were like nothing I have ever seen. Look out. Mars, called as Sailor Jupiter, flew through the air and unto Sailor Mars and Venus. The 3 Sailor Scouts rolled on the ground by the sheer impact and groaned as pain surged through their body. They tried to stand up, only to feel an intense killing intent rile through them. They tried to find the source but were too afraid to move. Idiots. Don't just stand there. It's not real. Mars yelled, but she was already bending at the knees. She glared at the boy who just glared back at her with those slit-like eyes, the eyes of a dangerous predator, ready to tear her apart. You think you can honestly win? She laughed, pointing to all the guards assembled. You honestly think you can get out of here alive? You don't know what I am capable of. In a blink he was hanging at the palace roof from his feet, chakra allowing him to stick there. I'll give you a taste of what a real fire attack looks like. Kaden. Grand Fire Dragon. The guards ran away as a dragon made of red energy swiped through their ranks, burning them where they stood. The hall was in chaos as ranks of men tried to fight each other to escape the giant beast that feasted on the charred flesh of man. Idiots. Who trains these people? Naruto dropped to the ground and flipped in mid-air to land on his feet, turning to face the queen. Is that enough? The queen sat on her crystal throne, her hands shaking. She was afraid of this. The boy, the sweet boy she had met that fateful day, was a threat. When her skin was pressed up against his, she had felt it, only for an instant, but she had felt it. The terrible power within him. Stop this, please. Don't make me kill you. She stood up and held out her hand. In an instant a giant scepter with a colossal diamond at the tip appeared. You may think you are invincible, but demons can be sealed. Naruto didn't look impressed, if anything he looked worried. Fighting the mother of your child, while your child is still inside her. Okay, this is strange even for me. Will you stand down, she commanded, will you kneel? If I don't, I might kill my daughter. In another blink he was in front of her. His face was inches from her own. No. In a flash he was behind Sailor Mars, flaming his fist into her kidney. She doubled over and vomited blood. In another instant his hands moved to her long luxurious hair and pulled them. The Senshi screamed as the hair was ripped off from the roots, and cried when she was hurled onto a crystal pillar. Her nose broke on impact and she drooled blood from her lips, most of her teeth shattered. Mars, you son of a bitch! Jupiter shouted, spraying beams of lightning across the chaotic hall. I'll fry you. You can try. Naruto made the seal for his favorite jutsu. Try and catch me. 1,000 Narutos came out from him, each one with the same menacing look. They surrounded every inch of the hall. They looked down at their targets, some smirking, some scowling, all of them giving them the same evil glare of their original. What is this? Serenity said, her heartbeat quickening. What manner of sorcery? An exact replica of Naruto came down behind her. Sorry, boss's orders. He's going to let loose just a bit. The clone made a seal and the queen found herself vanishing and appearing outside of the hall, where her men were charging in with reinforcements. Just stay. Before the cage Bunshin could finish his words, the queen's fist slammed through him, turning him into a puff of smoke. Tell me what to do? She rubbed her temple. Fool, I would have just let you go. No questions. No interrogation. Nothing, but now. Her eyes hardened. Furious light surrounded her pupils. It's time to put you in your place. Bodies were flung, crushed, mauled, and shattered against the diamond floor. Ants. They just keep coming in hordes, waiting to be crushed. He allowed Sailor Mercury to escape with her friends. The blue-haired woman turned back to look at him before teleporting out of the hall. Naruto sat on the throne, his face resting on his hands. So she's here. His eyes fell onto the pregnant queen. The tall woman was holding a diamond scepter, millions of light particles coming off of her, and the weapon she wielded. Plan to seal me? He said in their language. Won't work. The queen had no words for him, he noticed. I can't hurt you, can I? What to do, what to do? Naruto didn't move as a giant wave of light hit him on the face. Did she just throw a tiara at me? Puzzled, he caught the wave that was turning into a crown. He sighed. You people are strange. Thought that would work, she said, shrugging her thin shoulders. So you aren't a Yoma, I've narrowed that out. Naruto said. What are you? She asked, pointing her scepter at him. Before I seal you, I would like to know if there is something my daughter should know. Our daughter, Naruto said easily. Human, that's what I am. Mortal? She asked. Impossible. Believe it, he said. In a flash he moved out of the way as the ceiling on the throne collapsed. Close one. You are a strange one. Anyone tell you that? She asked. Naruto didn't answer. Are you ready for the second round? Naruto didn't answer. I can't win. One wrong move and she'll go into labor. He shook his head. Please stop this. Why, child? His grasp of their language was reaching its limits. My child. She's not yours. The queen looked at him coldly. She's not a child. She's the queen in waiting. Name? He asked. Do you even plan to give her a name? Serenity. Not a name. That's just a title. All queens are called Serenity. Enough talk. The queen shot another ray of light from the moon scepter. Moon crystal. Oh, not now. Not now. Just a little longer. Her sharp eyes glared at the beast in front of her. Just a bit more. I knew it. Naruto saw the signs. I knew this would happen. He dropped from the ceiling. The queen doubled over, clutching her belly. I will kill you. Her eyes held so much fury. Because of you. Naruto didn't relent. He stood in front of the queen even as she directed killing intent he would never have expected from such a kind person and knelt down to her eye level. Contractions. He said simply. She grabbed his arm, looked him in the eye and snarled. Get, Sailor, Mercury, or so help me I will seal you into the deepest depths of Hades, she snarled, biting her tongue as the pain threatened to spill out. Without a word Naruto cradled the woman in a bridal style and shrugged. Reminds me of another old hag. Hold on to me. He looked at the swollen belly. Mine. I won't let anyone harm you. He felt the queen's arms wrap around his neck. We have a saying back in our world, he said in elemental dialect. Don't trust a sheep, he sighed. Underneath the soft cuddly wool, is a beast waiting to sink its teeth into you. Despite the language barrier, the queen understood every word he said. A wolf for a father. She grit her teeth as another spasm of pain swept through her. How long are you going to wait till you sink your claws into me? This meal, it's awful, a blonde-haired girl muttered. Her bright blue eyes turned to face the person who served her the meal. Those same eyes became furious, cheeks reddened and her breathing quickened. I specifically asked for red-tailed 4-winged herons, not red-tailed 2-winged herons. She slammed her hand across the dish, letting it shatter against the dining room wall. Are you trying to get me mad, Ruto? No, Your Majesty, a teenage boy said, bowing at the waist. He was dressed in all-white butler's uniform. There wasn't a stain on him. I will correct this oversight at once. The boy looked up from his slightly bowed position and frowned. Although, I must say that the dish you just threw away is much better for your health. Did I ask your opinion on healthy dishes? The arrogant girl said, frowning after she said this. She looked him up and down carefully. You look different today, Ruto. Did mother make another modification to your uniform? The teenage boy shook his head. No, I don't believe she did. The girl watched as the boy sleeked down his bright blonde hair. She sighed thinking how ridiculous he looked when a fringed blonde spike protruded out his mop of gelled back hair. It simply looked so unseemly. All her friends at the noble court would make fun of her servant and, by association, her. Ruto was an embarrassment to her. I don't know why mother insists on always keep you with me, she said looking away from him. All you do is catch me before I can do anything interesting. You can hardly take care of yourself, Ruto. Ruto smiled. Maybe that is why, Princess Serenity. He walked closer to her and picked up a few of the empty dishes. There were stacks and stacks of them. I would be lost without you. He chuckled at the last part. The princess said, almost bored. Not funny. None of your jokes are ever funny. I find them dry. I try my best, sometimes I hit. Most of the time you miss. The boy chuckled. The princess growled at the boy's easygoing attitude. From as far back as she could remember Ruto had always been by her side, always taking care of her. He was the plainest guard dog she had ever met, and he never let her do anything remotely dangerous. When she was 5 she wanted to ride a horse. The next day all the horses in the stable mysteriously vanished. As she turned 10 she wanted to try swimming in the ocean. The next day the moon waters were frozen solid. At the age of 12 she wanted to dance with the boys in her mother's balls. Before she could get her first chance the boy she was supposed to dance with fell down the stairs and broke both his legs and hip. He was hospitalized for a year. She was starting to suspect that Ruto was the cause of all this. She just needed evidence. Ruto, how many years would it be now that you've been my butler? she asked offhandedly. 14 years, princess, he said, still smiling at her frowning face. 14 years, 30 days, 16 hours, 4 minutes, and 63 seconds. He paused, his smile becoming even larger, if that was even possible, and I don't regret a single day of it. She clicked her teeth. You spineless man, I pity any child of yours. You'll be mothering them until they are old maids. Yes, you do have one good quality about you that sets you apart from most other servants. She tried to think of something nice to say, but then settled for the truth. You're always there. Like a flea, you are hard to get rid of. I am glad that you put my persons in such high esteem, Ruto said. The boy combed down his hair with his large tanned hands and turned around. We have writing lessons today. Do not be late. I won't, she said coldly. Who do you think I am? I am not a child anymore, servant. Don't talk to me so formally. I am just reminding you, my lady, Ruto said, shrugging. Your mother would be rather angry if someone let slip about your tardiness, frankly. I am surprised you haven't at least warranted a detention in the Moon Imperial Academy with your less than stellar attendance. Again, talking to me like we're friends. My attendance is my business. I would caution you to refrain from this topic. Ruto's eyes hardened. Princess, do not assume that I am just your ordinary servant. But you are simply that? She asked, smirking. You've raised me, waited on me hand and foot since I was a baby, and protected me from my enemies. She folded her hands over her chest. I am gratefully, but there comes a time in a princess's life that a girl will have to let go of their caretaker. For an instant she felt something violent coming from Ruto, but then realized that she must have imagined it. Sweet, simple Ruto. A strange man who doesn't age. Retains the appearance of a boy. What part of him is dangerous? I understand, princess, he said, tiredly. His blue eyes straying away from hers. I just hope that if you ever need any help, you wouldn't hesitate to contact me. He turned away from her. I've always thought of you as more than just a charge. Sympathy, she scoffed. You've had 14 years to earn my favor and all you've ever done is ruin my fun. She looked away from him. I'll be glad to get rid of you. Can I ask you a question? Naruto didn't turn around from the sight in front of him. He was intent to watch the Moon Princess ride her mares. Why have you stuck around so long? The voice grew quiet. It's been 14 years and your daughter doesn't even like you. I have my reasons. But she's terrible. She's not terrible, Pluto. It's just that her mother's influence is too great, he said. I don't know how to make her see that there are other ways to live. Ways that don't require looking down on everyone and everything. Not even the queen is this bad. I would never picture you complimenting Queen Serenity, Pluto said, smiling. Perhaps you have learned to see the better parts of her. She isn't as bad as you make her out to be, you know. If you took the time to talk to her, you would see that. I've seen enough of this kingdom, Naruto said, shaking his head. It's dead, Pluto. Everything here is made of porcelain and glass. Why I haven't broken everything, I don't know. He paused. He turned to face her. Maybe that is my destiny? To destroy the Silver Moon Kingdom and start over. Pluto's face darkened. Not funny, Uzumaki. She sat beside him. But I can understand your frustration. She does appear to getting more difficult to handle. Children are like that when they get to that age, so it is only understandable. I don't care. I can't stand living like this, Naruto said coldly. I don't care if I have to spend the rest of my life taking care of the girl, but I can't just watch her turn into a clone of her mother. Pluto laughed. Uzumaki, have you taken a look at the girl? Naruto blinked. That is a stupid question, Pluto. Pluto sighed. How can she be a clone of her mother when she takes after you? She pointed to the angry girl, yelling at her horse to run faster. Just look at her. Don't you see it? Can't you see she's your daughter? Pluto, don't make me hurt you, Naruto said. Princess Serenity is spiteful, vain, arrogant, narcissistic, cruel, delusional, and, I hate to say, a complete idiot. Just like you. Naruto's eyes turned red for a fraction and he had to contain himself. He couldn't murder a senshi. Pluto was also the closet thing he had to a friend in these parts. Despite almost killing her, she wouldn't stop visiting him. She wanted to set things right, even if he had no idea how she was going to do that. It wasn't like they could just resurrect the elemental nations. Why are you so interested in the girl? Naruto asked suspiciously. There is something you aren't telling me. The boy rubbed his temple. Then again, there is always something you aren't telling me. It is for the best that I don't, she said, looking away from him. I've made a terrible folly in the future. I don't want to make another mistake. I still don't understand this whole notion of the future. How would the actions of the future affect the past? Before Pluto could say anything, he continued, raising his hand to silence her. Hear me out, if I change something in the past, I make a different future. That makes sense. Now, if I were to change the future, how would it affect the past? Pluto frowned. I explained this to you. When you are thinking about time, you're thinking in terms of Newtonian physics. You're thinking it goes one way, as if it is linear. That theory is wrong. Time is just a construct we use to describe the flow of events and can go more than one direction. It essentially does not exist. It also doesn't make things age. Molecules are what make things age. The half-life and decay of particles are what we are looking at. Quote, Naruto blinked. Sometimes I want to stab you. I don't know what any of that means, and what does this have to do with changing the future? Pluto huffed. If the reaction of molecules are what we are looking at, then you have to realize reactions can flow both ways. Which means time also flows both ways, Naruto said carefully. Please don't look at me like that. I am not a complete idiot. Just an idiot, that's all. Pluto laughed. This made Naruto look at her oddly. I can laugh too, she said. I just don't. I like you better when you don't, Naruto said. So any changes you make in the future can come back to affect the past. I got it. You saved the future, and as a result the ripples came back to affect the past. Only it came back to affect more than just the past of the Moon Kingdom. It went further and stretched further, back to the barbarian age where ninjas fought other ninjas back in my world. Pluto didn't answer. Naruto didn't expect her to. After a moment she put her hand on his shoulder. He shoved it away. She tried again and he stood up and walked away from her. Naruto, I am sorry. Naruto stopped and looked back at her, his eyes turning red. Do not use that name. His eyes turned to slits. Only my friends can call me that, and we aren't friends. You are using me for something. I don't know what it is, but I'll figure it out someday. That's not true, Plud said, standing up. I know you don't think I am a friend, but I would like to think we are more than just acquaintances. Why are you so desperate to get on my good side? He turned his face away to stare at the princess. Compared to the sailor Senshi, I am just a normal human being. He rubbed the back of his head in frustration. Despite how I look, I am not part of the elder races like the queen. You don't see me with fairy wings or pointy ears. I think pointed ears would be a good look, she pointed out. Those whisker marks would only complement it. Naruto touched his face. I wasn't born with these. He clenched his fist at the memory. I had these tattooed on me at birth. Pluto realized this wasn't a topic she could further continue. Are you ever going to tell her? Who? You know damn well who, Pluto said. Are you ever going to tell the princess who her father is? Naruto didn't respond. What was the deal you made with the queen all those years ago? She stepped closer to him, seeing the darkening clouds above his brow. She wouldn't have let you stay near the girl otherwise. I don't want to talk about it. His face broke halfway. Don't ask. Please, just don't. Talk to me, Uzumaki. I can help you, if you let me. Slowly she placed her hand on his shoulder and, to her surprise, he didn't move away. She forbid you from ever telling her who her father is, didn't she? Naruto's silence was her answer. Ruto, why have you been ignoring me? The princess was coming towards them, her eyes holding barely controlled fury. I've been calling for help for the last 10 minutes. Petulant girl, you just want to get his attention away from me. He's been watching you all along. She stepped away as the smaller girl walked up to her patient servant, who didn't deny any of the insults the princess dished out. You must be blind, princess, if you cannot see the monstrous similarity between the two of you. Wait till I tell mother. I'll have the guards whip you. No, you won't, but it does get the point across. Jealous are you? Princess, it's my fault. It seems I have intruded on your private lessons. The princess glared at the Senshi, but then blushed realizing who she was glaring at. My apologies, Senshi Pluto. She turned her glare back on, pointing it at Naruto. My servant hasn't been doing his job. I told him I was done, and he ignored me. Liar. You just spotted the two of us and nearly run him down getting here. Overprotective much? It's probably my time to leave. It happens sometimes. I am sorry for distracting him, I have that way with men. The princess looked like she had swallowed something vile, her lips curled up. Don't apologize for this miscreant. She curtsied to the outer Senshi. I bid you a good day. Pluto didn't make a bow. She didn't need to. The Guardian of Time was considered equal to the Moon Queen in terms of power, if not influence, and she let the princess know that. I also bid you farewell. Before departing, she had her crimson eyes directly at the princess. She stepped to the side and quickly rubbed her hands on Naruto's shoulder. And a good day to you, servant Ruto. Still looking at the fuming moon princess, she put her lips close to Naruto's ear. Be careful, Uzumaki. The queen has called in the outer senshi. The duo Uranus and Neptune are going to be coming after you. They aren't like the inner senshi you have had to deal with until now. The two are equal in power of all four inner senshi and are the real warriors of the Silver Moon Alliance. Watch your back, Naruto. As soon as Pluto was out of earshot, Princess Serenity swiped her hand on the back of Ruto's head, only for the servant to catch it mid-swing. How dare you? Steam was flowing from her nose. How dare you talk with mother's enemy? Ruto groaned. Not this bullshit. Just because she holds control of the underworld, time, and space, does not make her your mother's enemy. But she works outside of mother's influence. The princess spat. She is always going against mother's orders. I've heard things about her. She has power, but uses it for her own gains. Her own gains? Naruto shook his head. Girl, you have no idea how close you are to a spankin'. Just because she does always work for the best interest of the queen, doesn't make her an enemy of the Silver Moon Alliance. If anything, she is the strongest supporter since she works for the good of the people as a whole and not just the monarchy. My mother oversees the people. Pluto has refused to hand over her powers to her. If she was doing this for the good of the people, she would give over her powers. What could she need all that power for anyway? If you only knew. Naruto's face darkened. I would much rather hand Setsuna the power of time and space than to an arrogant brat like you. Enough, you were saying you were bored? Princess Serenity stared at him from the moment, her eyes narrowed. Yes, I am bored. She folded her long hands over her chest. There is a tournament today. I believe the new Earth Prince is participating, is he not? When is that arrogant bastard not participating? Naruto put a coat over the princess's riding gear. Still, this Prince Endymion is a lot better than his uncle. Uzumaki smiled internally, thinking how the previous heir to the Earth Throne, Espion-sama, was savaged by a wild animal in one of his visits. It was strange because there were very few animals that large in the Moon Kingdom. Are you ready to go, Serenity? Of course I am, she said, her lips curling in distaste. And that's Princess Serenity to you. How lucky you are to be born with a patient father. Not even giant nine-tailed demons talk to me like that. Neptune deep submerge. Naruto didn't move out of the way as a giant wave of freezing water approached him. He yawned and stretched his hands over his head, standing still as the water drowned him with the mass of a small building. He didn't move from his spot as the water swirled around him, turning into ice, and cutting into his flesh. He let the attack hit him, cut him, strike him, freeze him, and hurt him. All the while sticking to the same spot with the chakra on his feet. Worst assassination attempt, ever. He looked through his water prison to the tall marine-haired senshi huffing outside the swirling water. She's cute. Still, she looks a little pale. In the nightlight it's only worse. Neptune, hold him just a bit longer. An even taller senshi cried. I'll finish him off with one strike. No you will not, idiot. He turned to face this other girl. She was about the same height as Pluto, only she had short blonde hair that made her look masculine. Not cute, but pretty. Naruto looked at her yellow senshi uniform in distaste. Shit, these two are the outer senshi. So this must be Uranus. Strange pair. One looks like a guy while the other looks like some fairy tale princess. World Imperial Shatter. The ground beneath Naruto broke in half and he found himself buried in the earth. It's okay now, Neptune, we got him. Oh really? Naruto had switched himself with a rock before he could be buried alive. Funny, I think I am alive. That was much easier than I anticipated, Sailor Neptune said, out of breath. I thought he would have put up a greater struggle. She wiped her curly hair off her face, smiling cutely. I am glad we got him over and done with. Same here, Uranus said, leaning against Neptune. From what Mars told him, he took all the inners out by himself 14 years ago, then the Queen. She shivered. He blasted the palace hospital wing with Queen Serenity in his arms and threatened to devour everyone who didn't comply. Devour? You mean kill, right? No, I mean eat. Uranus sighed. Everyone there said he had fangs. I have more than fangs, you anus. Naruto snorted. Bet you get that joke all the time. Strange, the queen didn't think we could kill him though, Neptune continued. Yet here we are, without a scratch. Why is that? Maybe the inner senshi are getting weak, Uranus said. They're just power-puff princesses spending their time looking down on people. When is the last time they've been in a real battle? 14 years ago, Neptune said, laughing. You're right. Let's go tell the queen that we've taken care of her pest. Uranus stilled and looked up at the sky. You know, we still have a few hours before we need to make our report. She looked at her friend mischievously. Are you thinking what I am thinking? Neptune laughed and wrapped her thin arms around her friend's muscular ones. Oh, you are such a romantic. Hanging upside down on a nearby tree, Naruto raised a single fuzzy eyebrow. This isn't what I think it is it? He decided to follow the two towards the city. I am just jumping to conclusions, they're probably just really good friends. Michiru. Haruka. Yeah, they are good friends. Friend with benefits. Naruto scratched his fuzzy chin as he observed the two naked senshi on the bed. He held a portable camera on the other hand. I am surprised they haven't noticed me yet. You'd think a butler walking on the ceiling would be conspicuous. People tend not to look up, boss. A cage bunshin walked next to Naruto. I gotta say, boss, I don't think I'm ever gonna look at Uranus the same way again. The bunshin started to blush. I mean, damn, did you see what she did with her tongue? Naruto shook his head in frustration, but there was a smile on his lips. Please, that's somebody's daughter down there. With somebody else's daughter, the clone snickered. Think I can get a copy of that tape? Blu-ray, my friend, it's called a Blu-ray. Naruto folded the camera and put it into his suit. Technology, you have to love it. The last Uzumaki frowned. Which reminds me, where did you get the Blu-ray? You keep a stack of them in your room, the clone said, shrugging. They all looked the same to me. Naruto's hands shot up to the clone's face and it vanished. Princess Serenity's first steps were recorded there. Idiot, he growled. Michiru, do you hear something? I think never mind. Uzumaki sighed, played the mini Blu-ray. Bastard tricked me. It's just an empty disc. You want me to pretend to be the queen? One of them said. Naruto suspected it to be Michiru, Sailor Neptune. Want me to get the dress? Better get out of here before I get sick. He transformed into a bird and flew out the window. Black male, caw, caw, caw. Let the council of the Moon Kingdom commence, Queen Serenity, ruler of the moon, declared. Speak all who have news of the enemies outside the kingdom. Which one, you old crone? Naruto tried to look impassive at the glares he was getting from some of the sailor senshi, particularly Mars. Break a girl's teeth and she never lets you forget it. So unfair, haven't these ladies ever heard of forgiveness? What about the enemies inside the kingdom? Sailor Mars said, looking at Naruto. We still haven't found the terrorist from that incident 14 years ago. You know, the one who killed the champion. Touchy, Mars. You want to get rid of little old me so soon? Afraid are we? Naruto's eyes crinkled as he smiled at her. He poured some tea into the queen's cup. Would you like a cup, Lady Mars? Mars snarled at the words and spat in her cup. You make rotten tea. She smirked and poured out her half-filled cup onto the floor. Oops, I made a mess. Her dark eyes looked at him with malice. I believe it is your job to clean this mess. Naruto didn't lose his composure. He didn't understand why Mars was trying to undermine the queen. They had covered up the incident 14 years ago, saying that a terrorist broke into the palace, killed the previous champion, and detonated the Great Hall. Naruto was prepared to kill everyone from the palace to the exiting docks of the planet. He was going to take the baby and leave the place forever, but he didn't. The moment the baby grabbed his finger, all fight and violence had been lost. Naruto didn't want to cause the girl any pain, something that would be sure to follow if he kidnapped her from her mother. It wouldn't be fair for either of them. Naruto didn't particularly like Queen Serenity. He didn't think she was a bad person, but the two of them had completely different values. The queen wanted to create a perfect universe, a place of beauty. She wanted to build palaces everywhere, create government systems, etc. Essentially, she wanted to administer a very complex dictatorship. Uzumaki Naruto would have none of that. That is why when she offered him a place as a knight of the Moon Kingdom, he refused. He wouldn't work for a government that would allow an immortal 30-year-old fairy rule an empire with an iron fist. The idea was just ridiculous. But he wanted his daughter to grow up in a safe environment. He wanted the best for her and he had no idea how to be a parent. He grew up an orphan. He would have been happy to have just one parent, but he got none. Naruto didn't want his child to suffer the same fate, and if he kept running eventually he would have gotten himself killed, or both, and that was inexcusable. So he accepted the queen's deal. He would be Princess Serenity's caretaker, but would do it in secret. He would have to disguise himself as normal person, and he would never raise his hands against the Sailor Senshi again, unless they attacked first. So far he'd kept every end of his bargain, but Sailor Mars continued to push his limits. She's asking to die. Let me clean that for you. But, I must say, I didn't expect a princess of the sailor planets to be so clumsy. Some of the nobles around the table gasped. A common servant should not be allowed to insult his betters. The Senshi were among the top of the power bases. Below the queen were the Senshi, and below the Senshi were the nobles. Below the nobles were the commoners, like Ruto. This system was absolute and had to be followed, else there would be punishments. Naruto hated the system, but there wasn't much he could do about it. Did I offend you, Mistress Mars? He tried not to smile. I am sorry, that was not my intention. Mars grabbed her cup and was about to fling it at him, when Sailor Mercury grabbed her hand. Mars, no. Mercury looked at Naruto, whose eyes were smiling, and scoffed. He slipped, that's it. She gave a warning glare at the servant. Isn't that correct, Servant Ruto? Enough of this, Queen Serenity interrupted. There are no enemies within these walls. She looked at the other Senshi to see if they would disagree. None of them did. Everyone in this room is loyal to the Moon Kingdom. I trust every last one of you. Except for me, my queen. Naruto was on his knees cleaning the mess as quickly as possible, trying to ignore the glare Sailor Mars was sending to the back of his head. Then again, threatening to take away your daughter probably doesn't inspire a lot of trust. Sailor Uranus and Neptune will be here soon, Venus said, trying to ignore the blonde servant. They should arrive with their reports after they are done their mission. She looked suspiciously at Naruto and chuckled. The queen smiled at this hidden joke and looked at Naruto for a second. Yes, indeed. Let's wait for their arrival. Queen Beryl is gathering her forces from the demonic dimension and plans to use it to destroy the Moon Kingdom. Uranus tried not to scream in frustration as Naruto smiled at her. We should take steps to fight them before they become too much of a threat. Good plan. Too bad your plan for killing me didn't work out. Would you like some cake, Sailor Neptune? Naruto asked. You look a bit pale. Why yes, she said, softly stuttering. Please, I am afraid we cannot prepare until Princess Serenity's birthday, the queen said. We'll have to wait until then. I am sure our forces will hold out until after the ball. But your majesty, they could make a sneak attack while we have this party, Sailor Neptune protested. Please reconsider. She's right, my queen, Naruto said. He tried not to laugh at his usage of my queen. She knew perfectly well what he thought of her. Would you not reconsider? Sailor Uranus looked at him suspiciously. Good, you don't trust me. I like that. If you girls work for my little girl then she'll be okay. I don't mean to offend, but attacking during the Grand Moon Ball, on Princess Serenity's 14th birthday, does seem like the perfect time to attack. The queen slowly turned her face to him. Naruto held his breath. He always found her dazzling when she had that expression. Like she wanted 1,000 moon vultures to feast on his carcass. When she showed him her true self. He didn't like her illusionary self. The brave front she put up in front of anyone. The moon goddess act, worship me, thing didn't appeal to Naruto. He liked regular people. He'd seen enough people with god complexes and they all had something in common. They were insane. No, I think we will have my daughter's ball when I planned for it too. She looked at everyone in the council and dismissed them. If you have any further inquiries please address them to my servant. I leave you all, good day. She stood up, extending her large fairy wings and walked out into the hall with a hall of virgin maidens following her. Wonder if Queen Serenity ever gets it on with those maids? Never seen a guy enter her room. Naruto turned as someone tapped his shoulder. He immediately caught the fist that almost landed on his face. Can I help you, Sailor Uranus? Naruto let an innocent smile fall on his boyish face as the girl gathered power in her fist. Die. Her other fist landed on his face, but he didn't move. Son of a bitch. That hurt. Naruto let go of her other hand. He frowned seeing the bruise on the hand she used to punch him. You should go see Sailor Mercury. That looks infected. Shit, I must have let out a bit of Kyuubi chakra when I reinforced my skin. Monster, Sailor Neptune whispered, standing in front of her lover. You have outlived your usefulness. The princess no longer needs you. The queen sent us to kill you. I didn't need you to tell me that. Naruto folded his arms over his chest and scowled. This happens once every few months. Personally, I have no hard feelings towards you. You did provide a good show. Naruto stood through a half-hour explanation about why he was a hindrance to the Moon Kingdom. How he was a potential traitor. How he was a commoner. How he was a weakling, this part made him annoyed, and how a regular mortal had no place in the council room. Are you done yet? Naruto asked out of the blue. He looked at his watch. I have to serve my daughter dinner. She likes her dodo birds cooked in a certain way that the chefs are unable to replicate. I'll probably have to marinate it now just so she doesn't throw it out later. The two sailors blinked at him in surprise. You prepare her meals? Of course, best way to avoid her being poisoned. He spat on his hand and gelled down a strand of spiky blonde hair. She thinks the chefs cook her meals, but I do. But, she throws away half of the food you make for her, Neptune said. The princess's appetite is legendary, but it's rather selective. I can imagine, Naruto said dryly. But she does eat half the food I make, which is more than can be said for what other chefs make for her. How do you find time to serve her and make her dinner? Uranus asked, not paying attention to her infected hand. You'd have to be in two places at once. I have my ways. Now, I ask again. He cleared his throat. Are we done? The two senshi looked annoyed, but nodded. Good. Before they could move, he gave the two senshi a vicious right hook that slammed the two to the ground. They made a large crater as their heads penetrated the floor. Naruto bent down to collect their broken teeth. Another two for the senshi teeth monument. I'll have enough to build my own crystal teeth castle soon. A caged Bunshin appeared behind him. Naruto turned to the clone. Take care of them and do not, I repeat, do not molest them. He looked the construct in the eye. I'll know if you do. The clone saluted him with a monstrous, untrustworthy grin. Yosh, boss. You are late, Ruto, Serena said. What else is new? What the hell do you do in your spare time? Probably foiling my plans before they even start. The other princesses arrived with their servants ages ago. She pointed to the other senshi sitting on their seats in the arena, each wearing the native dresses of their planets. Naruto whistled appreciatively at Jupiter's dress, which looked like a skimpy green swimsuit. Disgusting. The Moon Princess let the taller boy guide her through the roaring crowd. No wonder the other sailors find you disgusting. If I didn't know you were gay, I'd have thought you a pervert. Your observations are as astounding as usual, Naruto said dryly. How long do you plan to watch today? The Imperial Ball is tonight. Naruto glared at a noble who almost pushed the princess, making said person yelp and jump. Your mother would be rather angry at me if you were to be late. I know that, the princess said, taking a seat beside Sailor Jupiter. I am the one who always gets yelled at. How come all the other princesses punish their servants and not the princess? Why just me? It's not fair. Naruto shrugged. As it should be. Before the princess could respond to that, the crowd started clapping. Serenity turned to look at the person entering the arena and blushed. The knight in black armor was beautiful. His face was feminine, his build sleek, and his hair darker than the knight. He stood tall and proud with a regal disposition which was further aggrandized by the way he accepted the applause of the crowd. Arrogant bastard, she heard Ruto mutter, but didn't respond since she was enthralled by the knight's beauty. Prince Endymion, Jupiter said, huskily. He's a cutie, isn't he? Jupiter ignored Ruto and looked at the gawking teen. But you know all about that, don't you, hun? The princess blushed and turned her face away from the grinning brunette. I was just watching the match. The match hasn't even started, Ruto said tiredly. You just like his face. Speak when you're spoken to. The princess shrieked, getting some of the other nobility in the crowd interested in their conversation. Ruto turned to face them and shut them up with a rumbling growl that warned them of danger. They turned back to what they were doing before. Scary, how does he do that? So, I am allowed to look, aren't I? She defended. No harm in it, is there? No, not at all, Jupiter said cheerfully. She turned to Naruto, who was looking at the dark prince with murder in his eyes. But I wouldn't advertise who you desire when a certain someone is around. Don't I know it? Serenity rolled her eyes and continued to watch the match. The prince was easily the better than his opponent. Sword fighting is primarily earthen. Is that the princess? Someone said. You know, the one fathered by? Look at her hair. It's blonde. Isn't it supposed to be silver? She looks so human. Does she even have wings? Princess Serenity closed her eyes to shut out the words. Do not let this bother you. You're too old to let it make you angry. Calm down, Serenity. They were talking about how different she was from the other residents of the moon. Unlike her ancestors before her, she did have the trademark silver hair and bleached pale skin. She wasn't as tall as her mother, or nearly as composed. People thought she was sick, that she had some kind of disease, but it turned out to be a genetic disorder of the strangest kind. The queens of the past had mated with races from all over the solar system, yet not one of them gave birth to a child that looked like the other race. The genes of the moon race were dominant. They didn't have a recessive trait in their body. Everything from their silver hair to their crystal blue eyes would be passed on to their offspring. They created near-perfect clones, so perfect that many scientists wondered if the queens secretly underwent mitosis. Which, in hindsight, made sense. That theory was disproven when a certain spy from the Dark Moon declared that the queens really did have male consorts. Father, would things be different if you were here? She clenched her silk dress in her hands, hating herself for getting sentimental. Then she heard someone screaming and turned to face the direction she heard where the voices came from. Oh, no. Ruto must have heard them. She tried to stand up, but Sailor Jupiter put a hand to her shoulder, stopping the smaller girl in her tracks. Let him handle it. Jupiter smirked. You keep thinking he's just a normal servant, but he's a lot more. Her eyes looked wistfully at Ruto. You know he really cares about you. I challenge you to a duel. Jupiter and the Moon Princess looked up to see an angry noble of the earth pointing his finger at the boy. Do you accept? Serenity groaned. He's going to get killed. Jadeite sneered at the servant before him. The miscreant had the nerve to come up to him and tell him to flat out shut up. They weren't doing anything wrong. The Sky General and his companions were commenting on the Moon Princess's unusual looks. It wasn't like they were calling her ugly, it should have been a compliment. But this jerk just had to come up here. Insult me in front of all my friends and tell us to shut our mouths. There is something wrong with him. Jadeite was out for blood. You don't have to do this for my honor, the Moon Princess said tiredly. He didn't say anything bad. I just overreacted. Naruto grunted. He didn't mean to say anything, but I heard the contempt in his voice. He thinks you're a freak. I hate people like him. Can you pass me that sword, princess? The princess rolled her eyes and handed Naruto a thin samurai-style sword. It's awfully small, isn't it? She asked. Wouldn't you want something bigger? Naruto tested out the balance and shook his head. No, this one is perfect. He put the sword back in its sheath and looked to where the door was. I guess I am heading out. Princess Serenity was worried for the boy. Are you sure you can fight him? He's one of the 4 Sky Generals of the Earth, she said. They say he's about as strong as Mars. Naruto snorted. If that's his limit, I am sure I'll be okay. He chuckled and stood up, patting the princess on the head. Again, stop touching me. You are making me mad. She said. I hate you. You're so annoying. I've heard it before, Naruto laughed. Well, she does have her adorable side. It's times like these that remind me why I am still here. Glad to know that little girl from long ago isn't lost. Do you have a plan? She asked, looking hopeful. That's why you accepted, right? Naruto nodded. Think about how he made you sad. Then channel my anger into these fists. He raised his fists to show them to her. Good plan? Queen Serenity folded her hands under her chin as Jadeite was beaten severely, within an inch of his life, while a crowd of millions watched on. Despite the brutality of the situation, the crowd did not command for an end of the match. Even after the general's left arm was cut off with a small samurai sword. One would imagine the medics would have rushed to the scene, but Jadeite fought well past that point. Up until both his legs were sliced off from the ankles. You don't look well, Sailor Uranus, Queen Serenity commented. Do you need to see the medics? No, I will be fine, the blonde replied. It just caught me off guard. I would imagine. Your reports boast high achievements against the enemies on the outer edge of our solar system, but they don't display the kind of savagery you see before you. The queen closed her eyes. She didn't want to see the Sky General reduced to a blubbering infant. How is Neptune? The woman's face paled. She does not like seeing things tortured. She glared at the calm form of Naruto, who didn't look bothered by the claps around the arena. My queen, why do you keep him around? Why is he so close to the princess? Why not send an army to wipe him out? I don't understand. Uranus, do you not think I've tried that? I've done that and more. She turned away from the Uzumaki to look at her most loyal servant. He has managed to evade all my assassins, soldiers, accidents, and calamities. It's almost like he has a spy telling him beforehand, before I get a chance to spring a trap on him. The sailor did not look convinced. My queen, I find that difficult to believe. She pointed to the boy, who was currently being yelled at by a fuming princess. You don't even warn your daughter of the danger she is in being near him. The queen's lip curled. She wanted to agree with Sailor Uranus, but she couldn't. Uzumaki was many things, good and bad, but he wasn't dangerous to Princess Serenity. She wouldn't admit it out loud, but he was the perfect caretaker. He took his job seriously. He put the girl's life above his own, a character trait that was very rare in the Moon Kingdom. In a civilization filled with immortals, dying was one of the worst fears they had to deal with. They could always have a second child, no problem, but dying was so final. As a result, people valued their life more than they did their offspring. The queen was aware that many of the people of the other planets, especially the ones that didn't have a senshi, loved their children more than themselves, but that wasn't the way of the inner planets. Please, do not take this as an insult. The sailor bent on one knee and looked at the ground. The queen raised her eyebrow but didn't do anything else to hide her surprise. This particular senshi was proud. The blonde looked up to the queen, her eyes pleading. Please tell me, Queen Serenity, that you are not starting to develop feelings for the beast. Why does this not surprise me? Your offer is duly noted, and need I require your, services, you will be the first to know. Sailor Uranus's face blushed and she tried to kiss the queen's hand, but the taller woman pulled it away. It wouldn't do to encourage her, and she knew it. She didn't have a problem with girl-on-girl love, but when it came to her romantic life, she preferred it to be non-existent. If the queen wanted, she could have every senshi in her bed, minus Pluto, with the snap of her finger, but she chose not to abuse her power like that. The queen knew full well what kind of problems resulted from sharing a bed with a senshi. The sailors worshipped the ground she walked on. They were more than willing to please, and that was the problem. These women were supposed to be soldiers, not slaves. They worked for the state, not for her, but the more time they spent around her, the more they lost sight of that goal. Mars was becoming truly obsessive. Ever since she became queen, Sailor Mars chewed anyone who tried to make a move on her. If this kept up, she would have to let the sailor go. She didn't want to, but understood she would have to. Lately, the only reliable constant in her life was the boy Uzumaki Naruto. She could at least depend on him to be alive at the end of the day, and expect him to always be around the princess. He's closer to the princess than I am. Her face darkened. Serenity has never asked me to play the sailor game with her, and she never talks to me so freely. Just look at him, gloating, pretending like he doesn't care how angry this makes me. Do you not think I also care about my daughter? I care about her more than you possibly could, boy. She stood up, making the kneeling Uranus follow her. Her hands trembled when she remembered those days when the princess was 7, when she would run around pretending to be a senshi, while Naruto pretended to be an evil demon who was out to conquer the Moon Kingdom. How close to the truth you are, daughter of mine, you have no idea. She turned her pale face around, her crescent moon glowing in the moonlight, to look at the boy guide her angry daughter away from the tournament, while Sailor Jupiter and Venus followed suit. Uranus, leave me. I have to prepare my dress for the ball. The queen's face looked thoughtful, and she smiled. Make sure the boy is not able to attend. Are you trying to make me look like a bloodthirsty princess? Serenity screeched, her fist beating on Ruto's chest. Idiot, idiot, you almost killed one of our allies. Are you trying to get executed? Don't ever do that again. I make no promises, princess, Naruto said, wiping blood off his fists. He used a white handkerchief to scrub left hand, then right. He looked at the princess carefully. I tend to get violent when people disrespects my charge. Why? Do I need a reason? An awkward silence met this admission. We aren't friends, we aren't family, we aren't anything. The princess sighed. She turned away from him and entered her room. Please don't make this harder than it already is. I won't need you after next year. You've been saying that every day since you were 7 years old, Naruto said, placing his bloody handkerchief back in his pocket. He put his hands over his blonde hair and wiped it down. Yet here I am. I mean it this time. her face blushing. "I was young then. You are young now," Naruto pointed out. "But I am not a child anymore." "You will always be a child to me," Naruto said. An awkward silence fell between the two. "Always." Princess Serenity let out a frustrated growl and charged into her room. She hated this. She hated the way the boy acted like a parent. She had met other caretakers and they were nowhere near as annoying as Naruto. Jadeite was swearing vengeance to the princess's servant. The man who cut off his legs, the man who took his arm, and who was currently a threat to the Dark Kingdom. Why a threat? Because it took a Senshi-level warrior to take down someone of his caliber. Jadeite was trying to think about how to take the boy down without anyone being the wiser, but was coming up with blanks. "Jadeite, why have you called us here?" a tall man in a gray suit asked. The man had the same silver hair as Jadeite, only longer, falling down to his shoulders. "This better be important." Jadeite told them about Ruto, and how he had completely humiliated him in front of the planets. The three sky generals looked at the injured general suspiciously, trying to figure out if the scars on his arms and legs were self-inflicted. It appeared as if Jadeite had sliced off his limbs and reattached them together in a hastily done job. The topic of Ruto troubled them. The four of them had recently joined the court of Beryl, a peasant who was quickly gaining power in the earth. She was planning a surprise attack on the noble courts tonight. If the Queen of the Moon was employing an assassin to protect the Moon Princess, it would put a dent to their plans. "So what do you propose we do?" asked Nephrite, a man with wavy brown hair asked. "If Ruto is as dangerous as you say, he must be eliminated." Naruto put on his disguise outside of the palace, watching for any signs of security. Security that could catch him at any rate. So far there didn't seem to be any, despite the vast number of guards posted on strategic points in the kingdom. There were far too many ways for the ninja to enter the palace without being seen, and it was a matter of working out which was the best option. The queen was trying to keep him away from this ball, that was clearly obvious, but the shinobi would be damned if he let her get her way. She may have been the mother of his child, but she wasn't his wife. He didn't have any obligations to her, aside from the oath he swore, and she didn't have any obligation to him, aside from the vague promise she swore. Somehow Naruto doubted that she would keep her end of the bargain, if the assassins he had to deal with for the past 14 years were an indication. Still, that wasn't the biggest worry. What vexed Naruto were the generals he saw in the tournament. It didn't make sense for them to be here, they were supposed to be back on the earth. Queen Beryl was gaining in power and it seemed far too unrealistic for the Earth's defense to be in this ball of all places. It's almost as if the Earth has already been taken over. He shook his head. He was jumping to conclusions. Whatever, not my problem if Queen Beryl's got the Earth in her grasp. Better that elf than this fairy. Queen Serenity made a curt bow to everyone who entered her halls who greeted her. Her neck was quickly getting sore but she ignored it. Protocol demanded that sacrifices be made and she was more than willing to make it if her daughter's ball were to succeed. It was hard to believe that 14 years from today that Princess Serenity was born. How time flies. She put her hand under her chin and thought about that day Uzumaki Naruto charged into the medical section of the palace and almost killed anyone who got close. He seemed so protective of her back then. No, that wasn't right. She knew that he was protective of the girl in her belly. That was always what it came down to. He cared deeply for the girl, far more than he could ever care for him. Queen Serenity did not mind this, of course, she preferred it even. She had enough followers at her disposal and adding another wouldn't do much in the way of making her self-esteem any larger. What would having Uzumaki Naruto's love do for her anyway? It wasn't like she was lacking of men. True, she could never attach herself to a man, for fear of the political favoritisms it might show to the clan or political group the individual might represent, but she didn't particularly care. She was a ruler of a vast empire that controlled billions upon billions of races, and her empire was only getting larger. Her major threats had been sealed long ago, and all that was left was to destroy this Queen Beryl who was becoming a dangerous political force on the earth. If Queen Serenity had been like her mother, she would have sent a team of Senshi to massacre the earth, but she preferred politics to fighting, something that her two most loyal Senshi, Uranus and Neptune, did not always agree with. "My queen, you seem to be in deep thought," a voice said from beside her. "What bothers you, if I may be so bold to ask?" The queen held in her surprise, seeing the tallest woman in her court. She tried not to grip her scepter too harshly. The long green hair, the dark purple dress, a pair of wooden sandals, and that dark complexion. The queen could recognize her a world away. Nothing, Princess Pluto, the queen said, trying not to show the annoyance she felt being around this particular individual. I am just wondering where Uzumaki is. I find that bit difficult to believe, Pluto said, giving the queen spectacular smile. Considering how you banned the man from attending. The queen didn't falter, she returned Princess Setsuna's smile with her own. Her fairy wings fluttered behind her innocently as she took a step towards the woman. They were about the same height, so the queen didn't have to tilt her head up to look her in the eye. He isn't a man, Princess Setsuna. He's but a petulant child that refuses to let go. It is difficult to let go of your child, is it not? It would be, if the child belonged to him. Setsuna's eyes narrowed quickly and returned to their previous state. Those crimson eyes looked at the queen with intense hatred, making the queen wonder if she needed to kill this woman before the night was done. It wouldn't do to have someone with such vast power to oppose her. Queen Serenity did not hate Setsuna. Pluto was arguably the most loyal senshi in the entire universe. The problem was that Setsuna was not loyal to Queen Serenity, she was loyal to the Silver Millennium. She was loyal to an ideal, to a dream of a better place for everyone within the galaxy. If need be, she might even kill the Crystal Queen, if that is what it took for the Silver Millennium to flourish. The Sailor Senshi had captured 90% of the galaxy, but who would they fight after that was done? Surely the Empire would have to be divided into segments for the 8th Senshi to control, but how much of the Empire did Pluto want to conquer? As a daughter of the underworld, Sailor Pluto was both an equal and opposite of the Queen. She was a paradox in Queen Serenity's eyes, since the Princess Kid, and probably should, have been her enemy for the crown. But Princess Setsuna didn't seem to be after the crown. Why are you so concerned about Uzumaki Naruto? Pluto's smile grew wider, looking almost predatory. I want him. She was after Uzumaki Naruto. It was at that moment that the gates of the Grand Ball burst open, letting in a figure draped in white. Perfect. The figure draped in white smiled at anyone who looked her way. Her pearly white teeth shone even among the crystals lining the walls, floors, and ceiling of the palace. She curtsied to the higher nobility, who bowed back in return. The girl's eyes were focused on the queen, standing beside her throne, who looked back at her with surprise. If the girl felt those silver eyes look at her, she didn't acknowledge it, she simply kept walking. No one seemed to stop her, even as she parted through the ranks of courtiers who were trying to win the queen's favor. They appeared afraid to go near her, too much in awe of her appearance. Soon the figure was in front of the queen. She bowed at the waist. Greetings, my Queen Serenity. The queen eyes was still too shocked at the girl's appearance to do more than just stare. Pluto took a step back to watch the performance of the girl in the long flowing white dress. Well done, she muttered. You continue to amaze me, even when we are at the brink of war. The girl in front of the queen looked almost identical to Princess Serenity, save the whisker marks. She looked like she could be her older sister, if not her mother. She even wore the royal gown of the Moon family, showing her place in their society. The problem was, no one had ever seen a girl like her. Worse, there had never been a member of the Moon family with 3 striped whisker marks. Marks like the boy, Uzumaki Naruto, who had long thought to have died 14 years ago. Pluto suspected that the courts were probably wondering what that meant, and how it could affect them. Naruto didn't tell Pluto his plan of entering the ball without causing a scene, fearing that she might tell the queen, but he did give hints that it would be very, very discreet. Pluto snorted thinking about Uzumaki Naruto's version of discreet. Coming into the ball looking a long-lost twin of the Moon heiress, he was practically begging to be executed for such insolence. May I have this dance? The blonde-haired girl asked. She took the shocked queen's hand and kissed it. This caused the queen to look startled, but only for a fraction, before the same cold fire was back in her eyes. Fire like ice, ready to freeze her within a moment's notice. I've come a long way for the chance. The girl tried not to smirk as the queen's cool glare bore into her. The girl felt the killer intent radiating from her like the blazing sun. She smiled harmlessly at the queen, showing rows of perfect teeth. Her flawless whiskered face made a cute expression, emphasizing her innocence, and her light blue eyes opened ever so slightly to show how young she looked. This was all to appear perfectly harmless to the crowd. If the queen attacked her now, the members of the royal family of Mars, Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter would be startled by the brief act of violence. The queen was in a delicate situation right now. She had ignored the advice of the counselors and had this ball, even if it left many of the planets vulnerable for an attack. "Why do you want to dance?" the queen asked, her voice calm, "when there are so many eligible gentlemen who are willing to take my place?" "Because I do not like men," the girl said, sounding petulant. "And I am not satisfied with just any woman." Her breath was hot and the queen could feel the spell of a powerful illusion, but she cleared her mind easily. "Who are you? Give me this dance, and you will find out." With barely a pull, the queen was lifted off her delicate feet and onto the middle of the dance floor. The girl's grip was strong, so strong the queen couldn't let go. She looked around to see if any of the guards were stopping this, but noticed that the guards were occupied, all of them talking to blonde-haired women of different shapes and sizes. Once the two were in the middle of the ballroom, music started to play. The melody was a lullaby she had once heard Uzumaki Naruto play to her daughter one night. Unlike the lullaby from the musical star, this lullaby was played using pianos and a group of violinists. The queen wondered if she even hired more than 3 violin players because there were groups of them, all with identical blonde hair. "Shall we begin, my lady?" the girl asked, her eyes looking at her with ice. The girl wrapped her slightly tanned arms around the queen's waist and brought her forward. The queen automatically put her own hands around the smaller girl's waist and soon they were ballroom dancing. This was the cue for the other nobles to do the same, since the two blondes, one platinum, one cherry, who looked at one another with furious intent, did this first. "Did you really think I wouldn't be able to enter this palace without ruining my little girl's birthday?" The girl's voice sounded almost exactly like the Moon Princess's. "Honestly, I thought you'd have known me by now." The queen's cold face turned, if possible, even colder. I can't believe you would go so far just to spite me." The woman grit her teeth, trying not to scream. "Did you have to make a scene? Couldn't you have just snuck in as a waiter?" The queen's wrapped her hands around the blonde's delicate waist and pierced her nails into it. The last Uzumaki didn't seem to mind and looked back at her with something akin to violence, but the queen would not be cowed. "What do you want?" It was now the queen's turn to twirl the smaller blonde and catch her. "Surely you didn't go to all this trouble just to dance with me?" Naruko's eyes looked knowingly at her. "I think you are aware why." The girl put the queen's head on her shoulder, whispering bitter words into those doll-like features. "Our daughter is seeing that Earth Prince. She says she's in love with him." The queen had to bite down the bile that seemed to be coming from the pit of her stomach. "No, you're lying. Earthlings were an inferior race, true, but that wasn't the main reason they were an issue. Not when the planet is having a civil war." Uzumaki smiled grimly. "I don't think the Moon Princess cares one way or the other about politics. She seems to be living in her own world." Naruko put her hand on the queen's cheek, making the woman flinch. "Just like someone else I know." The queen pulled away from the girl and glared defiantly at her. Anger sizzled from her very core. "He touched me, I let him touch me." She tried to rein in the fury she felt at being handled like that and managed to control an outburst. "I think we are done, today." "I don't think we are," the girl said, closing her eyes, giving her another perfect smile. "I don't think we'll ever be done." The girl turned away and walked towards a pompous-looking sailor Pluto. The queen wanted to rip the grin off the green-haired Senshi's face. She wanted to stab her scepter into the Senshi's guts. She wanted to tear those dark crimson eyeball out from that beautiful face. But all she could do is look coldly as the boy, no, man, who was the father of her child, walk into the arms of a possible enemy. "This kingdom is going to fall tonight, isn't it?" Naruko asked, her blue eyes looking solemn. "Everyone here is going to die, aren't they?" Pluto sighed. "You already know the answer. Why make me break my oath just to confirm your suspicions?" "Why not? There is always a chance you'll give me an answer that doesn't sound like it came out of a fortune cookie," Naruko said, grimacing. "The way you talk, it's little wonder the queen wants you dead." "I think there is another reason the queen might want me dead," Pluto said, her eyes darkening. "And it has nothing to do with politics." Naruko didn't care to hear the rest of Pluto's response. She turned to face the Moon Princess, who was dancing with the Earth Prince. The last Uzumaki didn't understand the girl's attraction to the boy. Pluto informed her that the prince declared his undying love for her, and the princess did the same. That didn't seem to make sense to the ninja, who thought that love was more than just a physical attraction. After all, the queen was absolutely gorgeous, but he hated her and she hated him. Their hatred was mutual, and the sooner the other one was wiped off the face of the moon, the better. The Earth Prince had only known the Moon Princess for a few hours, and it was love at first sight. This made Naruto laugh and scoff at the sheer stupidity at the two. Did the boy even understand her true personality? Had the prince ever seen Serenity when she was angry? Did he even know her favorite color? Did he even know her pet name, Usagi? Did he even care? Naruto was suspicious of the prince's motives, but Pluto assured her that the prince was just a simpleton, just like his uncle. "He's not a bad boy," Pluto said, dryly. "Your daughter could do worse. But she could also do better," Naruto said, sounding tired. "Much, much better." Pluto nodded but didn't say any more on the subject. "I have to go. Before this place is razed to the ground, you mean?" Naruto said in a mocking voice, shooing the taller girl away. "Get as far away from the action as possible, eh?" Pluto didn't answer. The green-haired princess took a step towards the pig-tailed girl and wrapped her arms around her, pulling her close. If Naruto felt uncomfortable from this gesture, she didn't show it. "This is the last time I am going to see you." Her face looked uncomfortable, her pink lips troubled. "Do you want a kiss?" Naruto put her finger to the taller girl's lips. "Can I trade in that case for saving my little girl?" Pluto looked away. Naruto got her answer. "Then I am sorry." She turned away from the senshi, letting the illusion fall. Slowly he transformed back into his butler garbs, his tanned skin a stark contrast to the light colors of the hall. He turned his face around one last time, his fanged teeth bared at her. "I don't want to ever see your face again." Pluto's mouth tightened, she clenched her fingers around her scepter, her expression looking almost hurt. "Then this is goodbye." Naruto didn't turn around this time, he kept walking. "I guess so." It was then that the earth beneath the palace shook, and the very roof of the palace shattered like glass as a maniacally cruel laugh filled the air. Queen Beryl's rage was explosive. Like a beast howling to the moon, the queen howled to the darkness, letting it answer her call. The creatures of the night came to her summons, answering her pain, answering her shouts of vengeance. For years she had struggled to bring the forces of the earth together to fight the Moon Kingdom, and for years she was waiting for a chance. A chance for the foolish Queen Serenity to slip her defenses. She was beyond overjoyed when her servant, Jadeite, confirmed that every important nobility of the planet Quartz was attending the ball, but furious when she heard that the Moon Princess was seducing the Earth Prince. The Earth Prince belonged to Queen Beryl. He was the final obstacle to obtaining the Earth. Many knew of her power, but she did not have the political legitimacy that the Prince of the Blue Planet had. It didn't matter if the prince was a simpleton who was willing to let his planet be invaded by the Moon Kingdom. The fact of the matter was that the Earthlings seemed to love him. To add insult to injury that the boy stood in the way of her rule, he had to run off and fallen in love with the Moon Princess of all people. Was the idiot trying to get them killed? Didn't the boy realize the political suicide he was invoking? Didn't he know that one wrong move and the God Queen would be down on them like a wolf on a den of helpless pups? No. That was the problem. The idiot prince did not realize any of this at all. The boy thought with his penis, not with this mind, and tonight the queen was going to set that matter straight. "Jadeite, Nephrite, Zoisite, Kunzite," she screamed, leveling her scepter into the earth, tearing a void in space. "Get the demons in positions. Fail me and you will die." The sky generals, once loyal to the foolish prince, didn't hesitate to kneel and bowed their heads before teleporting. Queen Beryl's crimson eyes glowed as she tore the fabric of time and space as he made a wormhole for the millions of Yoma in her disposal to enter the Moon Kingdom. The demons smashed onto the palace grounds and literally shook the floor with their power. The queen laughed loudly, allowing her enormous bosoms to heave and bounce like a tsunami. Her purple dress could barely contain her shuddering body as it trembled with power. Tonight all her plans would succeed. Tonight, after years of pain and struggle, the Elven Queen would finally destroy the Moon Kingdom, the last threat to the Earth. It didn't matter if history would paint her as an evil being, it didn't matter if there was a chance that she would be massacred today, all that mattered was this chance. This small chance that she could finally kill the all-powerful goddess, Queen Serenity. "But first I have to take Princess Moran back to the Earth," she muttered, blasting another wave of dark energy into the sky to release the gigantic demon queen Metalia. With any luck the Moon Princess will be nearby. Just where do you think you are going? A voice called out. Uzumaki Naruto, you are under arrest for conspiracy against the Moon Kingdom. Naruto didn't look back to hear the rest. Uranus world shaking, Neptune deep submerge. Not this bullshit, again, Naruto muttered, replacing himself with a vase as he leapt out of the castle windows, shattering the glass as he did so. It looked much more impressive this way. Don't these idiots ever stop? Probably not, boss, a clone said, jumping down from the roof. Still, they could be useful. You have a plan? Naruto asked. Think you can take care of them? Yeah, I think I can. The clone grinned and ran to the direction of the two senshi. Stop right there, Sailor Neptune said, raising her hand. Or in the name of Neptune we will. Oi, bitch. Shut the fuck up and listen to me, the clone said, not losing his smile. It pulled out a camera, inserted a Blu-ray and tossed it to Sailor Uranus, who caught it effortlessly. Take a look at it, why don't ya? After doing just that, the blonde-haired senshi crushed the camera with her fist. She howled in rage and fury, stomping the camera to little pieces. The clone laughed at the sight. Oi, you don't get it, do ya? The two senshi glared at the foul-mouthed creature. We made several copies. The two senshi looked horrified. And we got them ready to release. The clone looked thoughtful. Unless you do a little favor. The two were afraid to ask what kind of favor the creature wanted. Nothing fancy, just watch out for the moon brat, it said, instantly coming towards the two. Do that, and we'll delete the 1,000,000 copies we have on order. Uranus's fist slammed into the creature, turning it into smoke. So this is where you were, Naruto said, laughing at the ready forms of the senshi. Odd, I expected you pretty soldiers to be in the ball dancing it up with the best of them. You must be so pleased that you are wrong, Sailor Mercury said mockingly. Despite her expression, Naruto could see the relief on her face. They're almost here. Naruto nodded. Yeah, I know. He sent out his sage chakra into the environment. Get a number. 310,010, that's the number. Sailor Mercury turned pale. I see. She didn't ask how he got this number. The boy, now a man, had his way of keeping tabs on his opponents. Then we'd better get ready. I suppose so, Naruto said, pulling out a black kunai from his pocket. He pulled out a black knife from his other pocket and started sharpening the kunai, sending metal sparks into the air. We've got about a minute before the first wave gets here. You want me to take care of the generals? The sailors looked at each other. No, we can deal with them. How good are you with uncountable odds? Mercury said, trying to do the calculations for success in her head. What I am saying is, how much time can you buy us? Naruto thought about it. Enough time for you to evacuate the Moon Princess. Mercury figured that was the case. Naruto only cared about one person in this place. Her face softened. So we're working together, are we? She missed the twitch in his eye. Never thought this would happen, did you? Naruto shrugged. I've had stranger enemies turn friends, believe me. A flash of Gaara, Haku, and Sai appeared in his mind. Been there, done that. He looked at Mars. Any chance Mars won't kill me while my back is turned? Mercury grimaced. Probably not. Princess Serenity held the Earth Prince in her arms as his life went out. No, don't leave me alone. Please, hold on. The simple prince smiled sadly as blood trickled down his lips. I can't. He looked at her pleadingly. Please, run. His eyes slowly darkened and the life was snuffed out. No, she screamed, her heart breaking. No. Queen Beryl looked at the sight in horror as the Moon Princess glowed a powerful silver as something inside of her broke apart. She's going to kill herself and take me with her. She shouted. Damn you, girl. I will not let my life be snuffed out by the likes of you. Queen Beryl raised her weapon for the death blow. Farewell, Moon Princess. A Naruto clone ran towards the screaming girl. Hurry up, damn it. He screamed. His little girl was in trouble and he could sense a powerful signature up ahead. Serenity, don't do something stupid, just hold on. I think I loved you. The Moon Princess looked at the person who carried her out of harm's way. She looked at Ruto, sweet simple Ruto. She smiled sadly at the servant. That was a close one, Ruto said, looking at her with intense worry. Serenity, say something. I can't. This isn't funny. Ruto's blue eyes started to water. God, I was so afraid. You've always been afraid for me, but why? I've always been so mean to you. It's too late, Queen Beryl said, floating down to the ground. Her long red hair wrapped around her as she looked at the pitiful sight of princess and servant. She's lost the will to live. She scoffed at the girl bitterly. Idiot girl, you truly loved him. No, no, Ruto yelled. I refuse to believe that. Ruto carried the princess in his arms and held her close. She's mine, she's a fighter. She won't die. What are you saying, silly Ruto? At a time like this, you are nothing more than a servant, the Dark Queen chided, watching his darkening expression. Nothing more than a caretaker. Leave the girl and make your escape. I've been known to be merciful, on occasion. That's right, I am dying. I want to die. I got the prince killed. Let me die, Ruto. Run, run, Ruto, run. I can't run, Ruto said, his voice choking. I can't leave without her, I can't even live without her. The queen's eyes narrowed. What is she to you? The clone's body shook and the sheer misery on his face horrified the queen. She'd never seen an expression of such intense anguish before. What exactly did this boy have to feel sad about? The princess was well known for being a spoiled, petulant child. She may have even grown up to be as monstrous as her mother, so why should he care? The queen repeated her question, this time pointing her scepter at the shaking boy. I ask again, what is she to you, Servant Ruto? There was a moment of silence. Everything, so sweet. You thought that about me for real? After all this time, after all the times I told you to die, you still care. It was always you. I can't believe I've been so blind. Why, I am sorry. I've never had a father, maybe that's why I turned out this way. No, that can't be right, but yet that seems to close. Why is that? Why? But sometimes I'd like to think that you were my. And the light in the moon princess's eyes disappeared. So did the cage bunchen. Queen Serenity heard a roar of such profound pain and misery that she fell to her knees. Is that Naruto? She looked at the battlefield in front of her. Her sire was clutching his head as red energy swirled around him, wrapping him in fine crimson fire. The fire looked to be pouring out of his skin, and the boy's eyes seemed to be turning feral, vicious, and inhuman. She'd never seen such a horrific transformation. His arms and legs were lengthening and the bones underneath his skin were coming out from his body. His rib cage was expanding to the point that the bones stuck out from his chest. His head was covered in complete darkness. Eyes of a great demon sprouted from this darkness and his mouth began to open up to show a maw of sharp canine teeth. 6 tails made of pure black energy swirled behind him, ending in sharp points. This caused the Yoma he was fighting to run away in sheer terror, only for the boy's long black arms to reach out and crush its skulls. The queen tried not to vomit as the last remnants of the boy's skin fell apart as a giant fox skull came up on the boy's head, followed by the bones of a wolf arms and legs. I could never dream that you were this. The queen stepped away from the battlefield as the creature let out a roar that scared away the Yoma. What happened for you to change this much? The Naruto demon fell on 4 legs and looked around for prey. It roared at the onslaught of monsters and chased down the ones that ran away. Its maw bit down on the spines of the creatures that were trying to make a quick escape and pulled out the hearts of the Yoma that tried to attack it in large numbers. The demonic fox opened its mouth and particles of intense Gibbs-free energy gathered around it to form a ball. Fission reactions caused the energy to collide to become more powerful as the exothermic energy started to build in the system, waiting to be released. My queen, run, Mars shouted from a distance. He's going to fire a beam of black energy shot out of the beast's mouth, roasting everything that go in its way. Queen's Barrel's forces tried to escape, but it was no hope as the creature just cooked them with its black flamethrower. Mercy, we surrender. Help us, Queen Barrel. The cries of the demons were left unheard as the giant Naruto-like creature crushed, stomped, slammed, tore, and mauled everything that got in its way. He's enjoying it, the queen realized in horror. He's lost. Naruto's completely lost. The queen felt her own heartbreak seeing the mindless creature kill and kill. This wasn't her Naruto. Naruto was many things, but he wasn't a remorseless killer. She couldn't recall one event where he killed for sport. He tried his best to avoid violence wherever he could and tried to set a good example for the princess, despite her influence. My queen, oh, my queen, Uranus shouted from behind her. Forgive me, but we couldn't protect her. The senshi bowed on her hand and knees. I am sorry, but the princess is dead. Queen Beryl cried out in fury, watching her forces get decimated by the giant fox-like creature that was quickly growing a 7th tail. Did the Moon Kingdom employ their own Yoma? Why wasn't I aware? The elven queen floated up to highest point in the city, overlooking the carnage the demon fox was creating. She tried to stay out of the abomination's sight, hoping that it didn't decide to follow her. She had no experience handling greater demons and she preferred it that way. Minor creatures she could control was fine, but something like this was far beyond her league. She hadn't sensed the power of Metalia yet. She feared that the great demon Metalia was hiding from this being as well, but promptly stopped thinking about such a horrible thought. There was no way that creature which was nothing more than a vicious, rapid animal could be on the same level as a greater demon. "Generals, assemble," she shouted. She watched as her four most loyal servants teleported in front of her, looking worse for wear. "Bring me that creature's head." Before she could make her final command, she looked to the sky to see 1,000 rays of light. Then looked down to see the fairy queen's wings expand to blot out the rays of the sun. Jadeite was the first to react. "The Moon Queen, she's done it. She's activated a ceiling." Not even Queen Beryl made a comment. "Forgive me," the queen said, tears falling down her face. "There is no other way. The first thing to go was gravity." The artificial gravity that kept the kingdom stable vanished, and the buildings and dust were the first to be affected. Everything started to travel towards the artificial sky, which was slowly collapsing as ceiling dimension opened up in the heavens. The sailors Senshi, now battered and bruised, floated up to the dimension, crying as they felt their life turn into pure balls of energy. They felt themselves turn into something more than just molecules bonded together. More than just cells, more than just electromagnetic particles, they felt very essence, their souls. The queen didn't blink as her kingdom broke apart before her and into the dimension in the sky. It gathered the creatures of the Dark Kingdom and the nobles of the Silver Millennium. This was her final attack, and a suicidal one at that. "This is all my fault," she whispered. "I will be the one to pay the price." She looked at the form of Fox Naruto, who floated up into the dimension. Since he was in the very heart of the battle, he was going towards the place where the enemies would be sealed. The queen let out a sob thinking the boy's cruel fate. "I am going to seal you with the very creatures that will torture you until the seal collapses," she sobbed. "Naruto, I am so sorry." She watched as the giant demon fox opened up its maw to tear apart the creatures that gathered around him. It was such a gruesome bloodbath, but she didn't look away. She couldn't, she owed him this much. "But what do you care?" She rubbed her eyes. "Serenity is gone. She was everything to you, wasn't she?" She heard another roar from the beast, as if the creature had heard her. "Goodbye." She closed her eyes, expanded her wings and let herself turn to dust. The last of her energy became fueled to power the eternal sealing spell. "Maybe in another life, you and I could have been." "Wake up." A bucket of filthy water splashed on Naruto's face, prompting him to awaken. He looked around him, trying to figure out where he was. His arms and legs felt numb, as well as the rest of his body. He looked down to see his arms and ankles shackled to a cross, as well as his neck pinned with ropes. "I've been waiting for this," the person who threw the bucket said. He stepped out. "Oh, the shadow. Do you remember me?" Naruto tried to say something but his throat hurt too much, so he nodded. Jadeite smiled. "I am so glad." He summoned a sword from thin air. "You've foiled our attack." He walked towards the pinned Naruto. "I've been instructed to find out how, and why." He stabbed the sword into Naruto's stomach, causing the Biju container to scream out in pain. "For the next 100 years I am going to be your master." He stabbed Naruto through a lung, causing another groan of pain to escape. "You will call me, Master Jadeite." Naruto's tired blue eyes hardened and his glare was so intense that Jadeite hesitated before pounding his face, and breaking his nose. "Don't look at me like that." He pounded his nose again and again, breaking it into little bits. "Do you hear me? You will obey. You will break. You will call me Master Jadeite." Naruto's eyes turned to slits, his teeth turned to fangs, and his breath turned to death. He looked at the general, looked him real close and said, "No. You will call me." Jadeite screamed.
That's all for now. If you enjoy this video, then please like, share and do comments.